Sorted. Yeah. All right. Well, showing it there. It's just- Yeah, rather than not saying that. She's like, good in there.
Kia ora koutou, kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangimarie, kia tau mai te kaha, me te whai whakaro mō tēnei kaupapa. Ui e, tā ki e. So let's be grounded in clarity today, let's be peaceful, let's be strong and considerate for this purpose, bind together, and so it is. So I've just got apologies from our three councillors. They are I've had hearings today for the long-term plan submission, so
Apologies for lateness.
it's for lateness. So, oh, here they go as I speak. Well, one,
You can't keep a good man down.
we bother moving that now. That
What you better do the other? Do you know if the other two on the way? Yeah.
move.
Just move the other.
So I'll move that new. Yeah. So second by board member Hart. So we've got. Oh, yeah, sorry. You two agree? Pass the apologies for councillor Walker. Yeah, councillor. Thank you. Okay, so public forum. While Brent's settling in, we'll kick off to that. So our public forum's down this side today. We've taken advice from the last public forum feedback. So you have 5 minutes each to speak. The first person on my list is Sarah Richard. Yes, you can sit. Okay.
Kutukatua. My name is Sarah Richards, and I'm living at Whakarewa Street. I'm living right at the intersection to Queen Victoria Street. And so I am walking with my children who are 5, 3, and 1 year old each day, each morning down to town and back. So at least twice, actually more often, to drop them off to daycare. And there is a gap between Whakarewa Street 92 and 118, which is bare. There is no footpath. And as you can see in the pictures, it is quite narrow. The road is really narrow. It's just 7.5 meters. It is ideally a 50K zone, which in reality it is not. The traffic is racing through. I'm getting honked at quite often when I'm on the street, which I'm forced to, because as you can see in the pictures, also my pram isn't fitting through the poles or along the poles. So I'm forced to walk on the street. And it has no center line. It is a really narrow road, and a lot of orchard traffic is going through, a lot of heavy vehicles. And there's been more than once a situation where either I've been nearly run over, and as you can imagine how upsetting it is, also one of my children. And I'm asking the council now since 5 years to do something about the situation, and all the responses are reasons why nothing can be done. And one of them is that it is a rural area, zone 1. And this is also in theory the case, but there is nature land around the corner. There is Te Awhina, the church, there is the marae, there is Kohangareo, there is the high school a bit further down the road, there is the family center, the play center, and the Motueka kindergarten. So the most vulnerable part of the population is going up and down this road. And as soon as the rain sets in, we are forced to walk on the street. And you can imagine how, it's just, I'm getting honked at quite often when I'm pushing down the pram with my little children. My children are young. So when they are riding the bike or when they are walking, they need a clear instruction where to go. This is missing. They are just going on the road, or they, not anymore, because I'm worrying a lot and I'm stressing a lot going down that road with them. And this is not a good situation. And I tried to do all the reasons. What I'm asking you now is seriously consider, how would you feel when your children would be put in such a danger? And I'm working as a teacher. I might look after a couple of your beloved children. If a member of Whānau would come to me and say, hey, listen, this is a really seriously dangerous situation, I wouldn't write down reasons why it needs to continue. I would try to solve this issue. And I don't know all the aspects of why it is so difficult to close the gap to asphalt, this 250 meters, because it is not more than that. It's 250 meters, 1.5 meters of asphalt, and it might rescue a life, especially of the little ones and all the teenagers going up and down the road. They have better things to do than, they often don't look at the traffic. They do not. And I know that this is a wonderful community. I love living here, and I saw really incredible things happening. And I'm talking here in front of the most capable people, probably with the most expertise, and you have all the connections. And if you find an obstacle, if you can really tell me why it is necessary to keep walking down in this really dangerous situation, I'm forced to do that. I'm forced to walk. I have no other solution than to do that every day with my children. Please let me know what are the reasons and how the community can support. I'm happy to give all the support that's needed to the council and what I'm capable of, and ask all the people that I know, but I need the situation to be solved. I'm having 3 little children. I'm working full-time, I'm studying. I'm not nitpicking here on the council. I'm just seriously and genuinely concerned about my children's lives. And I plead you to fix that issue. Thank you.
Sarah. Yes, Sarah, just 1 second, just in case board member queries the question.
Which street you on? You on the towards the river or
On the other side.
You're on the other side.
I'm in between. I'm just behind the marae, so I'm just at the I'm at 132. So this is just at the intersection Queen Victoria Road, and I need to walk all the way down
into town.
into town.
You're not in the countryside. Please.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have any other questions? Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay. We have Isabel Monsley from Keep Her Beautiful.
I'm Isabel Mosley. I'm the chair of Keep Motueka Beautiful. And I just wanted to give you an update on one of our projects. Those who are on community board at the start of this financial year may remember that among Keep Mott Beautiful's project approved for this year's RFC funding is a project to plant 2 trees, 2 street trees on the road reserve outside the museum. Background was the loss of trees on High Street when the traffic lights were installed, which caused quite a public outcry. Our desire is to enhance the area outside the museum, which could and should be a huge asset to the town. The trees would provide shade in summer and help to create separation from the busy road, as well as all the other environmental and social benefits from street trees. The project has the support from Parks and Reserves, and Steve Richards, the TDC landscape planner, drew up this plan. The possible sites for the trees are quite restricted because of all of the pipes and cables underground. We have had a cable locate service done to get as good information as possible on that, and found 2 sites that Stephen felt were large enough street trees. The project was paused late last year by Jamie McPherson, Transportation Manager, who's responsible for the road reserve. And that was while the scope of the Transport Choices project was worked through. He's now given the go-ahead, subject to approval from Waka Kotahi. And they're meeting tomorrow. And so I'm hoping we may get their approval quite shortly and be able to proceed as quickly as possible with this project. You know, goodness only knows what Waka Kotahi will say. I don't see any reason they should say no, but they may. It's proposed to use for trees, Parotia persica, firs and ironwoods, which are the same trees that TDC has used in its most recent planting on High Street, which is probably about 5 years ago now. That was what Stephen Richards recommended, and I'm happy to go with his recommendation. They're deciduous, providing shade in summer, but not in winter. And they do have an attractive autumn colour. The ones that were planted have thrived well in High Street, so it should be a safe choice, as well as providing some kind of uniformity rather than a hodgepodge of different tree species. So just with everything else that's going on, I thought the community board would want to know about the progress of the project rather than just seeing trees appear. So you have already, it was approved in principle at the start of the year, so this is really just an update and an opportunity if you have any questions or comments. Moral support is greatly received.
Thank you for the question here from.
So once I'm feeling optimistic, when the trees are put in place, maintenance wise, what happened with the golden elms is they weren't maintained by whether it was that John Waka Kotahi or TDC. So is that something that keep Motueka beautiful, you know, with TDC for the ongoing trimming?
Yes, yes, yeah. I think short term they'll probably require some watering, and that might well be a manual process by KMB. Longer term pruning, I would hope that TDC would do that in the same as they do with the other varieties if they have needed pruning.
Yes,
Absolutely. 2 main trees expected to grow.
Oh, I haven't brought that piece of paper. They're not, I don't think they grow as high as the elms are now, but heading up that way.
A few
in a sense.
meters.
Oh, yeah.
3, 4, 5.
Oh, well, the ones that were planted 5 years ago are still small, and I'd say they're probably 4 or 5 meters now. Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilkerson.
Sorry, first of all, apologies for my lateness. So the proposal that you've put to council, which they seem to be in agreement on, is around planting seed trees and buffing. Was there any dialogue around the maintenance of them going forward, like operation costs, so that they don't become a problematic problem for us?
No, I haven't discussed that specifically with Parks and Reserves. Will do.
So potentially they'll need to go on some work program so as they don't become overbearing and then have the risk of them to be removed.
Yeah.
I think that will be quite a long time away.
Say to you.
Look out for that one, Jeff.
Thank you as well. In Williams.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Community Board. Prior to the preparation of this presentation, I read through a publication from Wakahi titled Transport Choices Motueka Project at their High Street, dated the 28th of April 2023. Mentioned in it was the fact that the Motueka Community Board has also been briefed and members of the board are also providing feedback. On that basis, I would like to strongly make a submission through the chairman of the community board to both Motueka New Zealand Transport Agency, to the Transport Choices Motueka project team, and to Tasman District Council Regional Land Transport Committee, the chairman of that a serious omission has been made in the Transport Choices Motueka project High Street, and that is the most dangerous vehicles to both pedestrians and cyclists, including mobility scooters, heavy trucks, have had no provision made specifically for an essential bypass. An interim suggestion, as mentioned in the 2010 year traffic study, a proposal to use Queen Victoria Street as a bypass. This could be suggested to the heavy truck owners specifically, and a written large sign could be positioned at both ends of access of High Street. Thank you for the opportunity to make this submission.
Thank you. We just accept. Thank you. Yeah, we'll accept that and it's just, thank you. Sandra. It is.
Either there. Sitting here in the sun. Not used to this kind of thing. I've got some notes written down so I keep on track and don't divert too far from the truth. Look, my name's Sandra Clifton. Recently, my husband and I, we made a formal complaint to the TDC via the mayor, and we copied in all of the Motueka Community Board members. And this was regarding the skydiving operations that are working out of the aerodrome at Motueka. Okay. Basically, we have some, we own some land. We're growing durable timbers to replace treating pine. We want to be more natural. Anyway, we've so far invested 10 years in this. We now feel strongly that we are getting driven off our land due to the noise and the constant droning and vibrations from the planes that are running at full load, full throttle, continuously, whenever they want to. So we have spent to date over a year trying to have discussions with either the CAA or the skydiving operation directly, because that's, you just seem to go around in circles, to be honest. You get passed from one to another, get no direct process. Anyway, I went and saw Mr. Stuart Bean at skydiving operation just the other day when they had their big long event. It went for about 5 days. I must admit, when you turn up,
they are very divisive as to the fact that there's no management there. There's no one to talk to. And I just stayed, and finally Mr. Bean came out and met me. He told me that he had sold the business, and that's been bought by a larger outfit called In-Flight Group, whose, when I look it up, whose directors live in big mansions up in the Auckland area. So they're not even here. Okay, so this company is now being controlled by outside forces. Stuart Bean still operates Skydive Nelson, and he leases planes as well. He promotes skydiving here in Motueka. And like just recently, he's done a 5-day event at the aerodrome. He's the chairman of the Aerodrome Operation and Safety Committee. He's also a member of the Motueka Aerodrome Advisory Group. So he's on everything. He's been responsible for moving motions and seconding motions which have restricted public access to discussions and operations at the Motueka Aerodrome. There appears, after reading the minutes, to be lots of conflict of interest at all levels associated with the Motueka Aerodrome. Motueka has grown. We're no longer to be treated like a little backwater town. Motueka's got numerous businesses that rely on workers be living in this community, yeah? And we want a fair and honest and nice place to work and live. I think that's a fair assessment. I think we're entitled to have days of rest, Sundays and public holidays. The research that we've done into the noise complaints reveals that there's a long and checkered history of complaints against plane operations from the aerodrome that are situated right in the heart of Motueka. After reading the MAAG minutes, it's very clear what's going on at the Motueka Aerodrome, and it's just nonsense. We are developing a Motueka Community Action Group to deal with the aerodrome noise complaints. We have received widespread interest in this, very short period of time. We're going to be exposing all information to this regard. We will be exposing all conflicts of interest and any corruption associated with this. Put simply, this issue is not going away. It's not going to get buried in some quiet committee any longer. So as a secondary step to our formal complaint to the Mayor, I asked the same questions of every one of you at the Motueka Community Board, the same questions that we put in our complaint. And if those of you that haven't seen them, I'll read them out. The first one, do you believe that ratepayers and community members are entitled to Sundays and public holidays as days of rest with some measure of peace and quiet? 2, do you believe that taking into account the number of flights the skydiving operation takes at full throttle, it is appropriate for the Motueka Aerodrome to be given its location within the community? Number 3, do you value the relatively small financial return you seem to be getting from the skydiving business and operations over and above the negative or noise pollution these operations cause to the Motueka community at large? On top of that, I've just added another one, and that is, we'd also like to know what clause in the resource consent allows them to operate on Sundays, public holidays, and outside normal business hours. In fact, we'd like to know where the resource consent is, because we can't find it. Thanks for your time. I look forward, well, we look forward actually to getting an email from every individual community board member with the answers to these questions. We do not want a overall board. We actually want to know people's opinions because we want to make it public. Thank you.
Question.
Sandra.
One question. So Sandra, now we briefly caught up. The noise that you're experiencing now, that's more recently in the last 12 months, or has it been longer?
From 18 months ago.
18 months ago. And I think from your comment that there was a change in flight plan that's.
We think so. I can't confirm that. We'd have to go back and look at the flight data, which I've just found out that we can actually source. So
And if I could just, with the acting chair's permission, you're asking a difficult question. So that the board's opinion is the board's opinion. And I guess I advise board members with caution in terms of jading your opinion. If we get involved in this and you express opinion outside this, you're going to struggle to have further conversation around this table if you want the board's help, because they would have declared an interest in a certain stance. So if the board has to consider this, they're going to have to consider all parts of this and then give you an answer. But that's more for board members to process at what stage you want to declare that interest. But
So we understand that this is being dealt with actually by the mayor in the office.
You know what? We sent off the complaint. We've never heard anything.
So you haven't had a response
You
yet.
don't get a number. You don't say, oh, we're looking into it, or we'll hand it to this, or nothing.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing.
We
So
can.
that's nice to know that they've actually,
We'll follow up
Something
and
what?
ask them to respond to you.
it's a start. But yeah, basically, we're not going away. It's going to start to get noisy. We want to know where people are, because we know we're not alone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And the last person on our list of public forum is Jude Ritchie. Just, my texts aren't coming through. I've just got a timer on my phone, so it's the noise.
How do you do? Daughter? I think you can start calling me Squeaky Wheel. I too about the transport choices form. And it just worries me as an individual that is on High Street, the what kind of a good job that they're actually doing in the research. So this lovely picture here that has footpath, a cycleway, room for bollards and planter boxes, and 2 lanes. Right? Now, there are various places in High Street where that could be accommodated because they're wide, but generally most of High Street is 1 footpath is 2.3 metres. The other side of the road, for some reason, is 3.4 metres. The 2 lanes vary between 4.6 and 4.7 metres. So I don't know. I think the next thing I really ought to be doing is going to cycleways to find out the measurements for cycleways, because this also has a grassy patch. So for them to put this picture up and say that this picture is what High Street is going to look like, they're going to have to remove some houses because High Street's not that wide. And in fact, today I was at Victory Square, and St. Vincent Street has footpath, cycleway, parking and lanes. Just out of the blue there. So I'm just wondering, the people doing this, like, full credit to Dan. I think he's a lovely guy, I really do. I think he's got a very hard task, especially when people like me are involved, and I want details. I want transparency and I want details. And in terms of doing a parking data analysis on the 7th of February, which was 7th of February, the day before, well, it's Waitangi Day, and then to say, well, on Waitangi Day, there weren't many cars parked there. Oh, why? Like, really, they ought to pick a day at the start of the year, a day third the way through, halfway through. Like, they really need a full consultation. Let's think about it, plan. So I'm just worried that they haven't actually thought about this enough for it to be good. And that's really where I am. And thank you for my time, and thank you for your time. And look forward to hearing what else is going to happen regarding this project. In fact, I think it would be better to put the money in that First Lady's problem, because it really is a problem. The cycleway's not. We've got a couple of cycleways, they just happen to be over by the waterfront. Anyway, Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Sorry, we do have one more that wasn't on the list. Tegan.
Kia ora. So Tegan Maru, just giving an update on Youth Council. So massive apologies from Youth Council from your meetings from the last few months. We are currently still in the recruiting process of Youth Council at this point in time. So we've currently got 5 youth councillors out of the 12 currently appointed on Youth Council, 2 of them living in Tapawera, making it quite hard to attend some of these meetings. But they did want me to give a quick update. Sorry. Yeah.
From your mother.
They did just want me to give a quick update on what they are planning at the moment. So they are very driven for anything environmental wise this year. So really looking at what they can do to kind of encourage young people to get involved in the environment, whether that's planting, recycling, council initiatives, and just their overall kind of carbon footprint that they're putting out. So Youth Council are in the process of planning a few cleanups around the place. In particular, they're looking at another cleanup in Thorpe Bush. There's a cleanup for Memorial Park, Goodman Reserve. So from coming down from Thorpe Bush, the drainage area and that wider park. And then they're also looking at options for the estuary loop and the beachfront as well. And really hoping to get some young people involved in those to really bring that community sense through young people. Another thing they are on the works for at the moment as well is community planting. So really encouraging people not necessarily to go plant out in the community, but kind of planting in their own backyard. So what they're planting, kind of that sustainability of growing their own garden. So really keen to put some workshops together and work with Enviro schools to encourage young people to start their own gardens and bits and pieces as well. So it's kind of the environmental at the moment. Obviously, they do want to grow over the year, but with just the limited amount of resource on Youth Council at the moment, they don't want to tie themselves down too much. They are quite busy students, but they are really keen to get involved in any playgrounds that TDC are upgrading. So thanks to TDC staff, Tony, for coming out and speaking to the Youth Council about Dix Reserve Playground. So they are very invested in being kind of that voice for young people and really getting inclusion in community assets as well. Yeah, that's all from me. There's some questions.
Yep.
You talking with regard to the plantings in parks, sorry, can't see.
Yes.
And we're talking with Keep On Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, so we did a cleanup it's been about October, and worked with Keep Motueka Beautiful. Unfortunately, timing didn't work, and we didn't quite line up, but are definitely talking to Keep Motueka Beautiful about including them in those cleanups and working in with the cleanups they're already doing, rather than going straight in behind or right in before, really making sure the resources kind of spread. Awesome.
Yeah. My question was, are old people invited?
Of course they are. Of course they are. So yeah, with all your council events, they're really keen to get not only the community involved, but not only young people, but really getting the community involved. So they are actually planning a community fun day for later in the year when it's a little bit nicer outside and we don't get all this rain, fingers crossed, which is really trying to bring young people, old people. So they're looking at doing something in Thorpe Bush, trying to get the residents of Woodlands kind of involved because it's that local park right next door, bringing young people and also opening to the community as well. So really having that overall community approach.
So, awesome. Do you want to shuffle your discs forward a bit?
You can go behind the tree.
Oh, okay. I will hand over
Sure,
to.
thank you. That was good. I quite like
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. So apologise for the three of us. We were in annual plan submissions, so Mr. Kirby didn't wait for us. So we're going to go.
He's on time.
Any declarations of interest?
On to the confidential item later on.
Okay, we'll pick it up in that confidential item. Confirmation of the minutes and the confidential minutes as you were circulated. Is there somebody to move?
Yep.
Move, Board Member Hart, somebody second. Board Member Hughes. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against carried. Takes us to item 6.1 and welcome Anna, Kim and Giles. We need 1+.
It's only 2 of us.
Oh, there you go. You 2 cheers is great.
I did against, well, he was a bit tied up, so.
Excellent. Well,
Sam and I,
um,
I've got a
bring it
short
in.
presentation which Emma's going to bring up. So I'm Anna McKenzie. I'm part of the policy team at TDC, and I've got Kim with me.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us. Ko Kim Arnold tōku ingoa. Nō wai meha aho. I'm Kim Arnold and I'm in the infrastructure planning team, predominantly water and wastewater. So, thank you. Kia ora.
So what we're going to talk about today is a plan change that we've just commenced at Motueka West, in the area outlined in red there. A couple of years ago, we commenced and we put it on pause of wider plan change, which included the larger area of Wakatu's land. But we're now just focusing in on this, this area as part of this plan change because it was part of some infrastructure funding, which we'll talk about a bit later. So currently this is rural 1 deferred land, and we're going to look at rezoning it to residential. With the inclusion of compact density rules. So the aim around this is to enable higher density housing on this block of land. Next. So what the compact density rules do is they enable smaller sites. It's a subdivision consent that's applied for at the same time as the land use consent so that you're able to get the design correct because there's no minimum site area. So these are provisions that are currently in our district plan, and they're in Richmond South. So the housing there is sort of similar sort of densities that we'd be looking at for this parcel of land if we enabled compact density rules on it. So as part of the plan change, we're looking at the constraints for this parcel of land, the coastal inundation and flood risk area. A lot of, the majority of the site is out of those areas, and a lot of it can be dealt with through the consenting process. Cultural heritage sites, we're speaking with iwi in the next few days around any sites. At this stage, our database tells us that there's nothing of significance on that site, but we will be talking to iwi. We're working with reserves around the provision of open space, and we'll be providing mapping which shows indicative reserves for this parcel of land. Transport, there's going to be an upgrade of Whakarewa Street and a bus stop is to be established on High Street and Whakarewa Street. And the infrastructure for this parcel is partially funded through the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, which Kim will talk to a bit more in the next slide.
Right, thanks, Anna. Yes, so there's quite a bit of infrastructure that's supporting not only this development, but there's much wider benefit as well. So I'm sorry, the picture there on the right is not very clear, but so the wastewater network hasn't got the capacity really to support the development without an upgrade. So you may be aware there's a multi-stage project over multiple years, and stage 1 we've just completed, which is wastewater and Grey Street and water main in parallel with that, and also a link to in Whakarewa Street for the water main through to the high school. So that creates a loop and it benefits firefighting and also capacity supply for the high school. Stage 2 is we've just tendered, and that's a new rising pressure wastewater main right up to Motueka Bridge. And again, that serves a wider area than just this development, but it's a fairly major project. Also in the future, if the wastewater treatment plant is relocated inland, we can bring the flow in the reverse direction. So it's a very valuable piece of infrastructure, trunk rise and Stage 3 is a wastewater pump station, and it's the sort of bottom left of the picture there. Primarily to serve the new development area at this stage. But again, if wastewater flow is reversed down to that point, it'll pump from there onwards out to a new site for wastewater treatment. The stormwater, it's not really shown well on that diagram, but it goes from the development eastward to the right, across High Street and through Low Street out the Woodland Drain. And again, that not only serves the development area, but also relieves some of the overland stormwater flow, which affects the houses on the immediate west of High Street. And it also creates a bit of capacity in Low Street to capture some of that stormwater there that collects and then get that out towards Woodland Drain. In transport, there's an intersection upgrade with the Whakarewa Manoi Street, and that's to create better linkage through cycleway and pedestrian desired pathways. So the IEF funding that Anna referred to is an application that council and Wakatu went together on, and that was in July 2021. So that's quite a significant process that we've been through, and we've been awarded 1.2 million towards the infrastructure to accelerate and enable housing development. So yeah.
Questions? Oh, yes, still go.
I'll just show you, flick to the next slide. For the plan, change the timeframes. At the moment, we're in the informal engagement phase. So we've sent letters to all the adjoining landowners, to the marae. We're just trying to get the word out there, I guess, that this plan change is happening, because the next stage is public notification. So that's when it goes through that formal process where you can submit and be heard at a hearing. And then the decisions are made. So that process it's hard to tell how long it will take, but we're aiming for public notification in August, and decisions before the end of the year. So that's the process around the plan change. So if anyone's got any questions around what we're up to in Motueka West.
Councillor Walker, and then board member Hughes, then Councillor Dowler. We'll go in a row, eh?
Yeah. Just are these slides available to us? So we'll get a copy in the centre. Cool.
Yep.
And the second thing is your 1.2 million towards waste, water and transport projects. How much of that 1.2 will be used on the transport projects? Do we know?
It's in the order of 300,000. Yeah, so about a quarter.
Just the intersection.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So it's a treatment which might be similar to what you've seen in High Street, either a raised table platform or a mini roundabout or that sort of thing. So that's
what was it?
300,000. Yeah, 300K. So council is sharing the cost as well. It's about 50-50. It's equivalent, sorry, it's equivalent of what would have been the ECK Kotahi subsidy, 51%. Makes sense.
Sorry, board member Hughes.
So this land is specifically Wakatu Corporation. No land just over to him. I think they probably own that as well. Anyway.
No, it's just
Just
Wakatu.
this block of land. So you're doing this in conjunction with a development.
No, this is a council plan change. The land's zoned a rural one, but it's deferred for residential zoning. But Wakatu are intending to put a planning application in as part of the contract for the funding in the middle of this year for a development.
Do you know how many sections?
It will be was it 180 up to 200, 180 to 200? Yeah.
Yep, so Diana.
Going to question you about the stormwater kennel, that pipe going across the street.
Like any of the trials.
Yeah.
The other room at the moment is the upgrade of High Street for the cycling strategy, etc. For
Different options.
yeah. Now I'll be really gutted if that gets put in place. That's if it gets put in place, and you come along and say, "My plan is big enough to put in place." Because I know for a fact if it goes in there, there's going to be modifications to the footpath on both sides of the road. There's going to be quite a bit of work done in that area. So I think you should be pre-planning to put that pipe in the ground before any work is done on the cycleway scenario on the High Street. Otherwise, I think you're very grumpy. Sorry. It's pretty from there. I'm going to dig up something that's been done.
Member Hart.
My point was when you were talking about the noise street and having it raised, that's because that's an area that they're looking at the transport choices, the cycleway as well. So I was going to say as well, little teams need to be talking with each other so that we don't have a digging up 6 months later scenario in that area as well.
I'm happy to respond, Chair. Yes, so that part of the roading project will be done under the Transport Choices project as well. So it will be certainly integrated with that project.
North side.
The Manoy, yeah. Where there's cycle lanes and all sorts. So yeah, so it's really has to go in conjunction with that. Yeah.
Got a couple. So the slide you showed, I think it showed 2-story. Are they 2-story upstairs, downstairs dwellings, but like Berry Fields?
Actually, and enables that higher density housing, the compact density rules.
Right.
And if you're looking at about 200 homes, this is kind of development that will enable that.
Range of it.
And
It will be a mix.
yeah, and then the 1.2 million from the IAF, is there additional fund? What's the total cost of the project? And how's that being met? Do we know that?
The total cost is in the, of all the infrastructure bits and pieces. It's around the 10 million mark.
And that,
which was in council's long-term plan to enable growth. Yeah.
and sorry, one more question from me, then we'll go back around the room. Is any? So the capacity for Woodlands Drain with the extra stormwater flow, what will that be at 1 in 5 years, 1 in 100? What will that cope with in terms of the stormwater that's, because some days that's already under pressure.
Sure. No, I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that. Unfortunately,
That's the other guy, isn't it?
This is the map. We can come back.
You can see that.
So, but it, you know, there's the control gates which controls the tide, but yeah, it would need to be managed in that.
So the containers, I've seen that pretty close several times without all that natural soak land being hard full and piping water back through that. So I'm just interested in what that is and whether there's some other remedial work that needs to be done.
I'm assured that the modelling they've done, it works.
Bring you when I'm a
And through the chair, Giles can come and talk, present to you at the end of this meeting.
even just an email with
Right,
that.
yeah.
Board Member Hart.
So with access way to the 200, where are they going to be accessed then? Through Rockaway Street or High Street, which are they
So
accessing? Presumably with their bicycles.
you want to answer? Yeah, so Whakarewa Street, there'll be mapping, which I was hoping to have here today, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get it ready in time, which shows indicative roading on this site, and that indicative roading comes off Whakarewa Street. What's the opposite? Manoy Street,
Oh, yeah.
and then cuts across to Grey Street, so centrally through the site. And then there's also connections up through those other connections to Whakarewa Street, which is cycleways and pedestrians. But the main road connection is opposite Manoy Street. So there's a website and that I'll put those indicative mapping and I'll flick them around to you as well. So yeah, so that you've got a copy of those.
Board member Upton.
Just interested to know if you did have an answer to Councillor Barrow's comment.
Yes,
Sort of whipped over to the next one after that.
sure. So happy to answer that, Mr. Chair. We haven't seen the final method for installing that stormwater. There is, you're aware that there will be trenchless options. So if it's a pipe material that's suitable to drill, that is one option. I do know the gap between existing services is reasonably tight, so it may necessitate open trench. In terms of the timing, Joel said they are hoping to start in January, in the summer. So we are a few months away yet from starting. So I'm not sure if that coincides. Sorry, did you say 6 months' time?
Well, if this other thing goes ahead, it's completed by 1st of July next year, so.
Okay, so the timing might work out. Yeah,
Excellent.
that timeframe works quite well. That's the case.
I think it's coming in. So just a reminder that this is the early heads up for the board and it definitely will be publicly notified. Yeah. So in terms of the process as that goes along. Right, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, one more, one last one.
One question.
Deputy Chair.
Just one, with the stormwater, I just wanted to understand the considerations with the natural and historic waterways of Motueka and if that's taken into account when we're looking at stormwater diversion of waterways.
I know in the literature we've seen from Okata already, they do talk about maintaining waterways and wetlands and native planting. So we're expecting to see when we get more detailed planning, things like that. So a stormwater corridor, I guess, and with an enhanced.
Like the natural, original
They-
waterways.
They've certainly given us the perception that they're keen to do as much of that as they can.
And that will come through the resource consent application.
Yeah.
Which will have the detail around the development.
Certainly there'll need to be some form of detention area before it goes into the pipe. Yeah. Take away the excess. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Brilliant, thanks.
Okay.
Sure.
See you.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to go random and we're going to go to item 7.2. And particularly we'll ask Grant and Tony, so you don't have to sit through this whole meeting. So special projects, and we're just going to get an update, I think, on Dix Reserve, one of those special projects sitting in there, then we'll come back to the other stuff. And sorry, so I don't think you've got anything pre-circulated.
Through some plants.
Oh, okay.
Lights.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Tony, Grant, and Lance. Welcome.
And I'd just like to, thank you, Mr. Chair, introduce Tony. I've recently joined Reserves and Facilities team. Last few weeks.
Yep.
Lance Rosenberg from Kumano Environmental, who's part of NELMAC, so he's helping us with the design.
We're in your hands.
Kia ora. Through the chair, I hope you have got some visuals. I've got 2 hard copies of.
I think it's only me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to come with
another. We have another 3. Maybe we could dish them out.
I've got a big serve. Go. Yes. Oh, perfect. Alrighty, we're in your hands.
Okay, so through the chair, kia ora, my name's Tony Strange. I'm your new reserves officer, as Grant said, in the parks team. I'm looking after projects and contracts, so this is my first taste. And I know there's more coming, so I'll be back to see you. So Lance and I most recently met with the youth council, and I have to say that was awesome because they gave us some valuable information to two people that aren't that familiar with decks. And I know all you people are. So I apologise if it's going over old water, but Lance, if you could jump in at any time. What I wanted to do was just iterate that it's $128,000 or $127,000 project. Already there's been a carousel, accessible carousel bought, which we will be putting into the space. We've had a good look at it, and as I said, from talking to the youth council, they've done some consultation with a lot of the groups here and schools, and fed back some feedback for us to change what we initially had or adjusted it. But this is really high level at the moment. So happy to just go through to the next slide, I guess, and walk through it. Here's the existing. You would all know it, obviously better than us. What we've found with this, and I'm happy, just jump in any time, Lance, but what I found recently was when I was there last week, it was terrible weather. It was so wet, you couldn't get around over there. There was 4 prams and you could see where they'd been. And so I guess part of this, and it's indicated from some of the information that I've seen already and already from the youth council, was access surrounding it is pretty key. We've looked at different options in terms of the swing layout. The main thing that I think that we wanted to try to address is putting in the carousel, the accessible carousel, as part of the that left-hand side photo, join that up. And what we found, or what we were told, was that it needed to be really accessible. That was pretty key to this project. So I'm happy to, if you guys want to jump in and talk about it, if I'm making mistakes, then please bear with me.
Mr. Chair, are we asking questions?
If you'd like to ask a question, Board Member Hunter, sure.
I'll wait a bit. I'll just.
Yeah, yes, go.
So the next slide, yeah. The next slide is basically some of the constraints, and or if we can go to the constraints and opportunities slide, which is the next one. Very small. Here we've talked about some of the opportunities, and maybe you could jump in there. Lance, and-
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, so we've been brought into this project, and yeah, it was, as Tony mentioned, he's done a good summary of where we're at with the project. It was fantastic to catch up with the Youth Council and for Tegan and the team to provide the information that they've done to date. That included, they've done a park survey of the Motueka area, and they identified Decks Reserve as potentially an area it's an area that's close to the town. It also, they identified it as being a good area for a more inclusive and accessible playground. And obviously Tony alluded to a few issues that the site has, including access to the picnic tables. So yeah, prams, wheelchair access. Those are all issues that we would like, that we went through. So the issues, yeah, we need to retain privacy for adjacent landowners, so a good buffer there. Improve shade opportunities, and we have a relatively, we have a limited budget, so we want to be really smart about how we tackle this to make the area as usable as possible. When Tony and I were on site, yeah, a lot of prams visit the site, so there were a lot of young toddlers running around. And when you look at the playground equipment there, it's not overly usable for that younger group. And it's something that the Youth Council identified at our last meeting as well, that there's not really a lot of play equipment for ages 1 to 3. So moving forward, the opportunities are creating an accessible playground that allows for all inclusive play, improves the access and allows for people to, or people of all abilities to interact with each other. So that's where the accessible wheelchair carousel comes in. What we wanted to do is, and I might just go to the next slide and just sort of jump into the concept and for that if that's okay. Yeah, so having play equipment that allows users to be together, to have passive observation of others playing, but also create a fluid area that allows for free play, allows for imaginative play. And one thing you'll notice when at Dex Reserve currently is that all the play equipment is relatively separated, so they're isolated elements. And what that restricts is it restricts your movement around site, prohibits sort of the interaction of others, and really imaginative play, free play, using things different. So really an overall connection to the existing picnic tables, improving wheelchair access. So that's up in the top left corner of that image. Having a route that goes right around that play area allows for kids potentially to be on scooters. We've also included sensory elements, which are relatively low key, but can be accessed by all. And then the orange band through the centre has elements that can be accessed by a wheelchair, including there's a item there at the top, which is called the stilt walk, which allows for kids with full mobility to use it, but it also allows wheelchair users to zip through it and interact with that surface, and then move on to the wheelchair carousel. Also added sensory elements in terms of planting, so bringing all that together.
Sorry, a question.
Yeah, sure thing.
Are you in charge of doing the seating as well, or is that different project team? Picnic
that would be
tables and
us.
things like that?
Yep.
Because we have been talking and via email about the wheelchair.
I saw that.
Oh,
Yes, yeah, I did see that.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
So you're going to be.
Yeah, we're going to communicate. That's the main sheet,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, we'll communicate.
Yeah,
with
so
them.
that is the extended picnic tables that are at the site.
Yeah.
Yeah, so part of that issue is actually accessing that shade area. There's the only significant shade area that's in that picnic table, in that play area, but we can't access it. So we do really need to put in some infrastructure to make the site more accessible. And that's really why we've got this concrete going around. We can remove, and we're actually increasing that picnic area. It's not a lot of free movement around those picnic tables where they are currently. So we have increased that concrete area to allow for more accessibility and mobility around those picnic spaces. And that would be the perfect opportunity to get the wheelchair picnic tables in through the shed. So.
And the other question was, somebody mentioned it, I can't remember, it was probably forum or through the special projects, that we having a drinks fountain in that area. Have you thought about that?
Well, I thought about it when I first started, when I saw this, because any other projects I've been involved in with, play space upgrades or any kind of skate parks and whatnot, you would try to put in drinking fountains. It's very costly. You've got to bang a meter on it. You've got to get the water to there. So there's an element of cost and ongoing, cost to the community as well with that. So at $128,000 to get what we can, I doubt that we'd be able to get a drinks fountain, but it would be a nice to have, but again, it's very costly.
So when money comes available, it could be something in the future.
Possibly, yeah. And I guess that's whether we want to absorb the ongoing costs of that meter, I'm not quite sure on how much how much it costs here. but I know that when I was.
There's one here on the corner of the building. There is one here, just outside. On the right place. With the long term, so there's one just publicly available outside the other side of this wall.
Oh, yes,
With a long term, there's an opportunity to tap into that.
tap into that, yeah. It's a good question.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah. But this has been a long time coming in, because I remember sitting on the youth council in 2000 as the council leader supporting. In 2019, looking at plans and designs with being. It's pretty cool to finally get to this stage. I have a couple of questions on. One is, I know that you say this is high level planning, but I've been caught out just recently on our high level planning. So I just want to get some detail right at the onset. Can you tell me what surfaces you're going to be putting in the entire playground?
Yep, well, we also carry on.
Yeah, because if it's going to be, what do you call it, inclusive for all kids' abilities, I wouldn't like to see that you left a whole lot of it in bark, which meant that kids in wheelchairs could touch it.
Yeah.
So you might put the carousel in, which is wheelchair friendly, and you may have something else that you highlighted here, but for it to be accessible for all, we need to look at the surface of the entire thing. That's my first question. And my second, I'll give you a chance to think about that. And my second one is the equipment that you're removing from here, where is that going? Because I'm mindful that in our special projects, we are supporting another area which has nothing in a reserve. And I'm just wondering, has it been removed because it's not fit and not safe, or it doesn't fit the new model, and what's going to happen to it next?
Okay, to answer your first question, so the red area around the carousel, we expected to have as the rubber accessible material. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be able to go outside of the other spaces only because of the budget restraints. So what we were talking about on the way in terms of the square metre rate for the rubber, I think 450 a square metre.
Yeah, and upwards. So at the current plan, that orange and reddish area is about 90 square metres. So that 90 square metres, is a significant amount of budget. So that's $56,000 for that rubberized softball. What this plan actually does is future proofs for further replacement. So there are bark areas and there's existing elements, including the large play structure, which is sort of for primary aged people. That's remaining because it's in okay condition. And then as part of that replacement in future, then the rubberized softball could potentially extend into that area. The total area of that is sort of around 300 square metre mark. So you'd be looking at $150,000 plus just for rubberized softball.
Follow up from Councillor Walker's question. What's the budget in RFCs for playground in general? And does Motueka have that sort of money in RFCs if that was a desire of this table to recommend to council?
An answer there off the top of my head.
Maybe a conversation's worthy to look like, I don't know the appetite. I have no idea the appetite, but funny enough, we had a Zoom in today from CCS exactly about making sure our spaces for families with disabilities are really inclusive. So this is awesome. This falls today. And to follow up from Councillor Walker, Mr. Strange has only been here for a matter of a week, so good, eh? Make sure you keep him, Grant.
I can't answer that, but we can find out. I've looked at the swings, the main bank of swings, and they are all pretty close to being at the end of their life. I mean, we can have them assessed and make sure they're safe structurally, and they maybe could be refitted. I can get back to you on that.
Can I just jump into the swing set, if I may? That replacement, what we're looking at is it's currently just standard swing sets. We're looking at replacing that with a net swing and a toddler swing and a standard swing. So the net swing itself does assist people with low mobility to be able to get on those. So people who aren't necessarily confined to wheelchairs, they do have there is a wider user group available to that. It would be amazing to be able to rubberize that area as well, but just given that.
I think we've got some pictures of them on one of the next slides of actually the bank of. Is that one there?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
that
the
bottom
swing
one.
setting at the bottom there.
So that's the carousel, obviously, and then.
Mr. Kirby played off.
I had to Google what it was because in England they call them a roundabout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, they called that somewhere else too, I'm sure. Good name for it. I guess we are going to, I would suggest that this is very high level. We are going to come back with more specific costings. We wanted to make sure that you're aware of where we were going and making sure we're in line with that long from 2019. I understand, apologise it's taken so long, but we're really keen to get the spade in the ground and start making this happen.
Mr. Walker.
I guess my last, I will disclose, I had a daughter who was in a wheelchair
Oh, yes.
and how excluded our whānau was, because we do jobs like this, which kind of ticks a little box and it accommodates this much of them. And I think in today, best practice would be that we are all-inclusive council, not a select. I can hear you commenting over there, Mr. Kirby, and that's. Yeah, my other comment, though, actually what I was going to say before I disclose it, is that the Youth Council of Motueka put a lot of effort into Thorpe Playground. We got it painted, we did all the stuff, and then the next minute, it's declared no longer safe when we removed it, and I would hate to see for the Youth Council's efforts and for our community that we would repeat that at Dex Reserve. And I'm not aiming at you because as I've just been told, you're only been here 5 minutes. I don't want to keep that. But I just want you to know the frustration that our community has around projects that start and stop. And
Yeah, well, through the chair, one of my projects is Thorpe. It's the next one that's coming. There's some more consultation around that. And I know there's another one, North Street. So there's a couple of projects that I'll be coming to talk to you about, and hopefully we can just get some momentum.
And you'll be absolutely welcome to join, because I think that's what's been missing, Councillor Walker, in terms of having resource to be able to do this. So, and thank you for meeting with the Youth Council, because there was a real frustration from them in terms of. So, anything else in the slide? So I guess you've seen the concepts. It seems happy. Question from me specifically is there some RFCs general that could do a really good job of this? And that could be for a discussion when you've got that information. But or an external, yeah. Okay. Board member Hughes.
Just going to comment, I'm going to ask my grandson because he scares the hell out of me going up on that space frame and all the rest of it. He also flies across the rail and goes up.
Okay, that's good. Feedback from users is more.
But just following up from Councillor Walker's code is, yes, the local gaming societies were very helpful for the Stat Park project and a couple of others. If it's important, maybe they might support this one. But what I don't want to do is stall this now. And with the design being able to keep upgrading it, is probably the positive part.
I think through the chair, I think that's the key for. We've firmly got that from the Youth Council that it should be completely inclusive. We absolutely got that. If there was enough money, we would, obviously be doing that. So yeah, if we could work on getting the rest of it done, future, and of course that other play space that will need to be replaced in time. So that could be another opportunity there. But appreciate it.
Thank you. So I think that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Exciting.
Right. So I know I'm late now. I'm just taking some out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going back up to page 24. So we started special projects 23, 24. Yeah, we'll go back to it because we're already in this. Okay, so the first part of this is, if you've got really good eyesight, you'll see the feedback in terms of the special projects that went out for consultation. So that'll be on pages 26 through. I guess the metric that's the easy page is. The metric is page 34, if you want to, if you like numbers rather than pictures.
On the, oh, there you go, scoring, you could just,
Open for discussion.
yeah. I don't know.
Board member, Armstrong.
Well, there's no council person here to congratulate. I thank them for the way in which they have worked out, using weightings rather than just first course of everyone, which has been the past. Weightings that gives a different reflection on how you view the responses. Just wondering, you have enough money for all these projects. Is that an option, or are we going to be knocking off ones that we don't think should be included?
So that's an option for the board. I guess. So firstly, acknowledging the board secretary who did the weighted thing. So you're thinking the right person. And secondly, the feedback that you've got back allows you to prioritize and do the ones that are higher ranked, which possibly mean there's some funding left over. Is there?
It's 120 or something. I did count up. It doesn't write down.
Wasn't 120 odd included some funding like the carousel carryover? Or was it 162?
Numbers, the estimates, of the projects which are in that table. Left-hand column.
So let's have that as the first discussion. So suggestion is there's perhaps enough money to do them all. Does the board want to do them all?
I can just add one other thing, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yeah.
Thinking that if that was possible, one of the constraints usually is how much does that place demand on council staff to do the bits they need to do. So I went through each project and there are 4 of them that require council staff involvement. The other 8 need only a little bit of council involvement, or in fact, 1, 2, 3, 5 of them don't require any council involvement whatsoever. So in terms of staff, much work they would have to be involved in for a year and fit in with their work programs. It's not great as it might not just do. It's a comment.
So can somebody help me? How much did the proposed projects add up to?
93,000.
And what's our carryover of unallocated paid projects to date?
Yeah. Sorry.
I just added up the ones on that table there.
Yeah.
The last lot.
And then what I can't find in this table is what projects are still sitting there.
Is it an action?
Hang on, there we go, 10. Yeah, 10. No, I've got the pages further down.
Yeah, it was.
If we have 189 in there, 93, it's 100K. There's a skate park, there's accessible equipment, there's 70, High Street, 80. So there's 80 playground, Thorpes Bush, there's $90,000 of unspent, like uncompleted projects and the thing to date. So it might discrepant, 93 and 90. But the only question I have is, the board asked for comment, and there was some, in one of the medias, there was some pretty scathing comments on the budget for some specific projects. So in improving them all, you're going to say, thanks for your feedback, we've got money, we're going to do this anyway, which is the board's decision.
I think, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Some of the comments that I saw publicly was $10,000 for a picnic table, when in reality, that was just a guesstimate. It's not, the men's shed aren't going to charge us $10,000 to put a picnic table up, so.
What will they charge for the concrete footing?
Yeah.
So you could find yourself $5,000 for a picnic table installed pretty fast.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, board member Hughes.
My personal opinion is we need to be frugal and have this money for when you need to use it for something good. I looked through here. The table and seating for a proper grove reserve. Yeah, I was one of those ones that was very vocal. Well, if we're definitely needing that, then we need to look at it. But you come down to reinstating the picnic tables removed to build the library. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that the contractor that built the thing should be reinstating that sort of thing. You know, you can't just rip stuff up and then leave it. I'm sure there must have been something in the budget there for reinstating grass and replanting this, that, and the other. You know, shouldn't we not? I mean, I'm all for having picnic tables out there, but should have been the community board that paid for them, and they were already here before the library.
Can't remember the scope. I suspect that.
Just a thought. That,
Yeah.
You know, somebody else should be paying, not us. That's all I'm thinking.
Member Armstrong.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I could make comments on several of these projects because I was one that put the list together and did as much estimates and inquiries about them as I could. That particular instance, there is already a project going. There are funding, one of the two funds that you remember, Mr. Kirby. One of them was to do landscaping.
Yes.
Yeah, there was.
And so I talked with the Beryl Wilkes about it and said, if we gave another 10,000 to it, and the guys of reinstating picnic tables were still going to do it, and they do a better job of the whole area and give another $10,000. That's a bit complicated to explain if you're going out to the public with a one sentence thing. So contribute to that in general landscaping was the item there.
George Robert Manning. So, Councillor Walker.
So my understanding of this library project was there were 2 or 3 phases or steps to do with the landscaping. And we only got stage 1 because we ran out of money. So stage 2 it's no longer on the table, as far as I know, that we haven't gone back out looking for.
You're off funding, I think.
Yeah, but how secure is that?
First tranche. It's first tranche, Mr. Kirby, I'm pretty sure, isn't
I
it?
think so. I'm just trying to get to this stuff.
Mr. Kirby will check. I thought it was in the first tranche with likes of design of the pool, the first tranche, something second. Okay, so we're going back to this. So in terms of the projects in front of you, I've got 2 questions. First one is, do you wish to approve them all? Because it looks like we've got budget to do so. The second one is there an interest from board members to take a lead on some of these projects? Because history says if there's no name against it, it doesn't progress very fast. Even if that is following up the likes of the men's shed or some other person.
It's about 4 of them.
Councillor Walker, don't you dare say it's a cheers roll.
I guess my concern is, we went out and consulted with our community, and we've got the feedback from our community. And if we're going to say we're going to do them all anyway, what is that telling our community? We're just giving them the fingers and demoralising. They made an effort to contribute and put it in their order. So I personally don't believe we should do the whole lot. We should listen to our community because we went to them to hear their voice.
Do you have a suggestion of what ones we might have before we go to board member Hart?
That came through. But I have to admit, I don't know what the weighting, the average rank, the weighting average, and obviously I've missed something along the process to understand how you've got those different columns. So if someone can perhaps enlighten me.
Somebody
we
what?
talked about that last month.
No,
Yeah.
but somebody wiser than elected members may be able to do that. Yeah,
feedback was collected via an online form. All the paper copies that came in got loaded into the same form, and the comms team took care of everything this time. So they provided that feedback about the weighting. And they generated it directly from the input into that form. So I have limited information, sorry, that was all they could. But I've listed them in the resolution. So A was the priority, was the number one, highest ranked number one.
Can I just get your pause just for two
Yeah.
minutes? What page is the resolution on this?
24.
So A was the most popular, ranked at number one, and then they descend, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
If I could just add how I interpreted it, so the average rank, what I'm assuming is the average score for those that's submitted, and then screen just, so if there was 5 people that gave it 8 or 9s, that was the average score submitted. The weighted one was compared to the number of applications that it was given and the score that it got, I suspect. It's usually how.
It's explained on page 31.
Oh, there you go.
Tiny print. It's not easy to understand, but
Does it,
I can understand it.
does it say something like that?
Well, yeah, wait, I reversed to rank positions. So if people voted number one for something, then that got 20 points, I guess, was it? Or 12, sorry, 12 points. So we've got 11.
I guess the simple thing is then if you go to page 24, A to L, first 50% of the higher rating ones, the second are the lower rating. And then if you want details about how much separated, that's when you go back to that table. Of course you can, board member Hart.
Oh, thank you. I can remember a few months ago when we were having the discussion about going to the, and so it's probably minuted somewhere, is the idea was we had got the funding to do all of the projects, but the exercise of going to the public to get their views was we've got to gauge then of how important certain projects are to the community. So if all of the community wanted tables and benches, and we knew that, that was a real big priority for them, or footpaths or whatever. That was what the idea around that. I can specifically remember having that discussion. It was purely finding out what the community's priorities were, even though we had money for all of the projects.
I get it, and I guess I'm going to go back to saying, are you going to approve them all or select? But just remind you of the criticism that this board has currently given another publicly consulted forum, where it may get similar sorts of feedback. It may just do it as well. So the board's asked feedback, has feedback. There's definitely differences between the most popular and the least popular. Because you've got funds, do you want to spend them all, or are you going to show some?
I'm just saying what was agreed, whether it's right or wrong, but that was what was said.
I guess if we go back to page 24, if this is helpful, let's see if this works. There is a resolution on page 24 that basically says you can approve them all. Is there somebody that wishes to move that? If there's nobody wanting to.
Yes.
Moves board member Armstrong. Is there a seconder to approve the bill? Board member Hart. Discussion. You want to speak to?
I'll have a right to reply.
You'll have a right to reply, but you can speak to, you moved it.
I just give the opposite view of what Councillor Walker suggested there, that if we always go saying we have $60,000 or 55, whatever it is we get each year through the targeted rate, it will always have some big figure left over, not unspent each year, year after year after year, unless we, for 1 year, we say, right, this year we've got 100,000 or 90,000 more projects. To just always stick to that figure is going to always be a surplus sitting there doing nothing. Is a view of that.
Councillor Dowler.
I'm going to go down a slightly different track that we just had 3 wise men sitting here at the table talking about a major playground development out here, and parking is probably going to be a shortfall of funding.
Mm.
And I'll be, just to say, first 6 A to F there, which is 55 grand. And you keep the rest, and if these guys have to come back and say, we need another 30 grand to finish the rubber mat underneath this area, we can say, rightio, special project, we instigated it, you have the money, it's still, that'll be my preference.
Well, you pushed out it.
When does?
I suppose I can, but it was that second, it wasn't.
Yes.
Yes,
It
right.
was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I foreshadowed that as an amendment.
This is like 5:30 on a Tuesday night. So what's
Push out.
so we've currently got a motion that's moved by board member Armstrong, seconded by board member Hutt. What Councillor Dowler's basically said, if people don't want to vote for that and that motion's lost, then he's foreshadowed the next, which is A to F, and bank the rest for potentially another project, i.e. could be the X% project.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course, yeah.
When does the funding roll over? Like, when do we get our next?
1st of July.
Right.
It's budget, yeah, 1st of July
So
every year.
1st of July, potentially, we have got money. You know,
This is 1st of July's money. Is it not?
no, we've got the balance of, that was last year's. Yeah, it's last year's.
No, it's close to count.
So 1st of July, we get another lot of money. This is last year's money, so we have got funding to put towards the playground. Because it wasn't spent, we're spending what wasn't spent previously. Yes.
I thought it was just this year's.
Is that what you get then? Yeah.
It'll be on finance. Yeah. The opening 1st of July. The net income surplus. Actually doesn't. Is that figure? Oh, no, figure.
Yeah.
We'll get, it'll be another 60,000 drop on 1st of July, if that's where I read that.
That's how I read it.
At the moment, your remaining balance. For the project is 62,000.
Yeah, 93 projects. Yeah, that's right.
We spent 33.
Yeah,
95 allocated, and we're talking about.
yeah, we've got 100, I'll be looking at the wrong figure. We've got 162. Less 90 that's unallocated. So we've got 72,000
It's 2021, so that's 20.
No, this was for 21-22. This must be the 22-23, which I was not.
So we're talking about now, 22-23 has 140,000, that's what you've already allocated, carry forward 55. This year, you've got 195, so far you've spent 33.
This year being ending 30th of June 2023.
Yeah. It's last.
This is 22-23.
Okay. As far as I'm aware. Sorry, financial.
Okay.
As well.
Because it would have been July, we've got projects. So do we always operate a year behind? We don't do one for 1 year.
Projects for this year, we spent 33,000.
Okay, let's go back. So the advice from my right is that there'll be another, whatever the annual thing is, in the 23-24 financial year, which is essentially from the 1st of July to the, we must spend it in retrospect, because it'll be collected in the 23-24 year.
Right.
Yeah, so this is right.
In the financial.
Yes, yeah. So it's collected over the year for the, yeah. Okay, so,
At the beginning of the year, the budget says money's going to come in over the next 12 months.
yeah. Any other discussion before we put the original motion, which is to fund them all? Any other discussion? So the motion is, so we're clear, it says on page 24 that move that Ada L is approved out of the special projects fund. It was moved by board member Armstrong, second by board member Hutt. All those in favour say aye. I need to hear you. Against?
Against.
1, 2, 3. So 4? Who's 4? 1, 4. Against? Okay, so it's lost. So we're now, the councillor Dowler's foreshadowed motion, which is to fund A to F and hold the remaining funds for a project that staff may come back and ask for assistance on.
Is it, what's the A to F, sorry?
Um,
It's hard to
page 24.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does it,
Need a second, if you need a second.
does it have to be from a staff project or from something that's a community grant for?
Oh, it could be the board gets to, the board will just have to decide whether they.
Oh, hang on.
I'm just wondering with it being under the special project, if it has to follow a certain process.
No, it's, no, the board has the ability to.
The next page, they total it's 38,000.
Please, yeah.
G to L. Those, that totals 38.
Okay. So what so currently we have a foreshadowed motion that's moved by councillor Dowler, seconded by councillor Walker, which is A to F. I'm just gonna talk to your motion currently, and I hope that you may wish to amend that. Because it includes item H, which is the annual contribution to Sandy Bay Maraha Residents Association. So I'm just testing your thinking around that.
Not perfect. The issues there, but I would.
So currently that the motion is A to F. It's the projects that are being moved as being.
And the balance.
That's 55.
Well, no, the balance will sit there and if there's a project or a staff. Councillor Walker.
This question of Ms. Spears, yeah. Of Mr. Kirby and Maraha Association apply through community grants for that money if it doesn't come through on special projects. There's other associations like Tasman Association in Brightwater do it through community grants. So I do not have an uncomfortableness around if they didn't get in the slot, but I'd like confirmation from the staff member that they wouldn't miss out if in fact they needed it.
They could apply, they could sort of say.
That'd be down to the chair.
Yeah. Who's the chair?
All good.
Like because I raised it, I know that it breaks science, but have some sympathy for granting what is a minimal amount for the work that that association does. Maraha. But I'm okay to, I actually, to be fair, I'm raising it, but I support your recommend, your motion. But then we have to justify skipping G. Board member Armstrong.
Just a question about process here, that the purpose of this fund is things that the community have asked for. I think in the past, because we have unspent and it's the amount unspent is built up, we have tended in the last at least 3 years, be back further than that, to repurpose some things, and that's the way in which the skate park fund is built up. We said, oh, we'll just move it to that. Is that fitting with the rules?
From memory, it fits with the rules because there was one word change and the 10,000 was normally would allocate up. There was a word in the policy from memory that was, it left one little bit of discretion. There was some staff pushback in terms of advice around that, but the policy allowed for those exceptions like the accessible playground and the skate park to receive for. So one thing is the current policy allows for it, but it's not normal. It's the extraordinary part.
Respond to that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't questioning the amounts that going over the $10,000. I was questioning that after we go through the process of getting these lists and saying, oh, we're going to do these ones, we have a lot left over, and then we start giving it to other projects ourselves unilaterally. That worries me a little bit, because given the situation where we can just out of the blue halfway through the financial year say, oh, we've got 60 or 40,000 left over here, let's put it into such and such without consultation.
Good point. So I guess the easy answer is, it's not an easy answer. my understanding of the policy they have in front of me is that fund is meant to be spent every year on the year it's allocated, because it was set up to fund, essentially in the old days, it was set up to fund projects that were in the long-term plan that were important to Motueka that weren't funded in the current annual plan. And Councillor Dowler, correct me if I'm wrong. So that was its whole mechanism was, and that's why it started as footpaths and minor stuff. It was to accelerate already projects that had been scoped but weren't funded in the current annual plan. So that's where it started, and then sort of it's evolved at that time. Councillor Dowler, then Board Member Hart.
Usually we were doing tram crossings or all the intersections, stuff like that to help all that out. And sort of grown legs and sort of wandered out, picked up all these other stuff there. Just a quickie, the staff there said that there was 300 square metres of area underneath that playground in Dix Reserve that ideally would be have rubber matted. $450 a square metre, it comes to $135,000. And the matting's actually more than the playground, so that's the only reason why I'm bringing that up. But they all of a sudden say, well, for another 30 grand, we can finish it, whatever. I'd be more than happy to be there for that. We heard it in the annual submissions today, as you, Mr. Chair. Would make it user friendly for everybody, not just some.
Okay, what I'm going to do is that we have Councillor Dowler's moved that, Councillor Walker's seconded it, so Councillor Dowler can have a right to reply, but there's time for one question or question. Yep, put it up.
Just so I can understand it in my head, following on from what Board Member Armstrong said and comment earlier.
Just a look at this.
Oh, yeah, it's that heater. So we were discussing, like my previous comment with, you know, putting them all through, because that was and we were assessing the priority of what people thought. So, and I just want to get this right, that I think I agree with you, David, but I want to make sure that I understand what we're saying. We've gone out and asked the community what they want. And you could switch it around and say, well, we're completely ignoring them by not doing it this time and giving it to a project they don't even know about. Because we've gone out to the public and said, what would you like us to spend this money on? They've come back with these items. And then we're saying, well, we're only going to do half of them. We're going to ignore what the rest of the community want because we're going to put it to something that you don't know about. So we do need to be a bit careful.
So I guess perhaps it's the what happens with the leftover money is the issue. So I guess my question is do you have comfort if it's just moves A to F and there's nothing mentioned about the leftover? But think about it, Board Member Keys.
When this went out, I would understand it. It's like, hey, what would you like for Christmas, Motueka? We got some money and we want to spend it. And people have come to us with what they want to spend. It's up to us as representatives of the community to spend this money correctly that really benefits the community. Just because people want a table at Wharekapa Grove, and let's say everyone wanted it, is it really needed there, or was just that the group of people that were all around it? Do you get what I mean? We've got a big responsibility on our shoulders here to spend money wisely. I see one of these things here was the shade cloth over the top of the outdoor gym equipment, which was another, hey, here's a great idea. Let's have outdoor gym equipment. Now we're going to need to cover it up. We've got a hefty, we've got a hefty thing on our shoulders here. And I just feel we need to be careful with it. But hey, lots of people have, the council come back and said, hey, a lot of people have said this, they want this. Hence, barriers said, well, why don't we do the top ones? I don't agree with one or two of them, but I think it's a better option. And then we can go through these other ones. I mean, do those people know about the play park here? Heaps of people use that.
Deputy Chair Grant, we might go around this.
I was just going to actually tail on that. No, I guess, yeah, maybe if the community had known that was an option, then we might have got those votes. Because it was like when I went out to get feedback of what people wanted, we got quite an array, and David had to you know, filter through some of them because they weren't fit for purpose or whatever. So I guess from my understanding, we're still spending the $55,000 on A to F. So we've achieved that part of what we went out to the community and asked for. There is a leftover amount from previous projects undone or whatever, that we could look at funding stuff in the community that's going to benefit a broad sector of the community. And then we've got the money coming in, well, the budget coming in July to be able to do the special projects process again, where these ones that have missed out may come back to the top again, or there may be some others that we haven't thought about.
That's the key.
So, yeah, I think the process this time round, Board Member Armstrong was really thorough. I think it was good. We got a good selection of comments from the community, and we might generate some more interest moving forward.
Anybody else? I think we're going to put it to a vote. And I guess that's where with Deputy Chair Graham was exactly the side conversation Mr. Kirby and I were having, is that for the new board, you've got out and consulted 10 projects, and you are allocating your $55,000 from this year in your governance seat against projects that rank the highest. And then as a side, there's some residual leftover money from the prior board that is available for special projects. So,
And your decision at a later date might be to fund the next 6 on this page.
could well be,
Or put it towards this, so yes, that's another decision.
yeah. And that could simply be, one of those could be a comment from the council representative at a local association for them to present, perhaps. But anyway, the motion is A to F, moved by Councillor Diallo, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We got there. That's 7.2 dealt with, isn't it? Yes. Okay, we're going back to 7.1. Yes. Yes, that's awesome, actually. It's awesome that you maybe remember how to foreshadow motions, but in terms of making decisions and the difficulty that comes with those, you are done.
Would you like to ask a minute that board member?
We missed that over the.
Okay, 7.1. Okay, so I don't know if I've received the email from Dan. And can anybody tell me if I've received an email from Dan?
No.
No, Mr. Kirby or Emma? Okay, so what I'd ask for Dan, if he had time, was to send me some bullet points of where the project is. If Mr. Kirby corrects me, anything that I get wrong, but my understanding is the team is still consulting in the segment of High Street. Our town, Motueka, has a public meeting tomorrow organised with the project team at 5:15 here in the library.
Is that just a meeting of the business?
It's a business members meeting.
It's not a public meeting.
It's not a public meeting. I heard there was talks of having drop-in sessions at the library.
I heard that, John. I haven't heard that's been confirmed.
And there's also been a comment that there could well be a workshop brought back to the community board. I haven't had that confirmed though. So that's the bits that I'm aware of. And then you'll see a response from the board's leader from Mr. Kirby in attached appendix. And I guess I just highlight that whether that was a result of our board's leader or not, that the consultation period has been extended and the project was essentially paused for that consultation to go. Is there anything I've missed? And then we'll go around. Any other members? Board member Hart, then Deputy Chair Graham. Yep, this is transport options. So options or choices?
I think it's choices, but we've got it as options.
Yeah, because I didn't think there was a choice.
You're right.
Gosh, I'm going to get sick.
That was a low.
Board member Hart.
Okay, I would just like to make a point, if I may, and it is to do with the transport options, with the choices. There was some issues a couple of weeks ago with misinformation and whatever, and it was alluded that it might have come from myself. It hadn't done. Anyway, I spoke to Dan Roberts and he agreed to talk back to the Commerce Department because the misunderstandings were actually in the TDC's own website. So they have changed the wording, but I would like to read this out. It's only 6 lines. What we are not doing, we are not proposing any changes in the town centre as part of this project. See area marked in red below, which is the whole of the town centre. We are proposing full community consultation for the future of transport in the town centre area marked in red, beginning July 2023 to December 2023. So are you or aren't you? You're saying you're not, but then in the same paragraph, you're saying that you are. So if I'm confused and I sort of know what's going on, what's the public thinking?
If I could just pass it to Mr. Kiwi to pass to the comms team and it would be handy. Sorry, waiting for an interpretation.
Oh, what that means is they're not proposing any changes until after the consultation is done.
But they are proposing changes after the consultation's done.
Well, so we're not proposing any changes in the town centre. In other words, they're not going to do any changes until after the consultation is done, because if we are proposing full community consultation for the future of transport in the town centre area marked in red, beginning July 23 to December 23, consultation will inform the future projects.
Which indicates, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
That indicates to me that we are looking at changes at the area marked in red, but in July.
During the consultation.
It's just not now.
Yeah. What they're saying is that they're not going to go ahead with the changes in the meantime, but they can do the consultation.
And then look at changes. Yeah, so that's why I guess
can
the
understand
town was up in
confusion. Yeah.
arms.
So for clarity, it is, and we're going to go to Councillor Della. Is this the upgrade of High Street or is this a transport choices phase? So
I don't know.
Okay, because that's possible. I'm really letting you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Della, then Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I've been starting to think, because a few years ago, there was talk about the High Street landscape upgrade, yeah. And it was put in the long-term plan. But then it was deferred until after Motueka did the High Street upgrade. And then it was going to come back and revisit it. So I will assume that it is the landscaping upgrade of that area in the red.
That's my question.
Which doesn't mean to say car parks would go, but it's to do with the footpaths, hopefully the wooden planter boxes might go, rah.
In the lane, it's going on.
And that's a long-term council-funded project.
Yeah, but through
Confusion,
the
is
chair.
Yeah.
That is on the transport choices
Yes.
page.
It's
It's not,
maybe that's where because it may have been brought forward, but I can't remember when it was exactly in the long-term plan. So maybe the transport choices funding has allowed that to be brought forward.
But what will Member Hutt's saying is it's confusing because it doesn't talk about.
Yeah. I saw the wording myself and I went, really?
Yeah.
Someone's got to get their act together and start doing things a bit better, but yeah, I'm just taking that is what was the next proposal for High Street, as far as I'm aware. I don't know of anything else.
So it'd be handy to clarify whether that's second transit transport options or it's the long-term plan upgrade of State Highway 60 High Street Motueka that was in the long-term plan that was deferred. Councillor Walker, then board member case.
Yeah, pretty good to have that clarified, and not just for us, but the wider community, because that is very misleading and
Be
very
good to talk about it
confusing.
tomorrow night, wouldn't it?
Yes, that would be. My other thing is, I'm not going to say too much, except the email that we got here from Jamie today, is that public knowledge? Is that just?
I haven't got an email from Jamie today.
Maybe you haven't, but very well.
Governance.
I'm not that special that I've got it on my own, I can assure you.
It's just government body.
Governance.
Yes.
No, I'm not on that.
Government body doesn't actually make the decisions for the transport choices. It only makes recommendations to the full council. Full council has to decide the final outcome.
Yes, because it's a change to the, for you, Mr. Chair, it's a change to the traffic devices bylaw. the council has to sign that off before any physical works has to be done.
So is that a portion of the projects going back to council rather than all of the decision making?
It'll be, I'm not sure if they're going to do the stages, but certainly the High Street one will be dealt with all High Street. But that'll, according to that there, I read it, that won't happen until after December.
As far as I'm concerned, I was happy with the Old Wolf Road crossing. I was happy with Tudor Street. I wasn't happy with High Street, still are, because there's no design of any bus stops or anything incorporated in it.
In that case, my recommendation through you, Mr. Chair, is that if you're on the governance board, that you recommend that you go to council on the ones that you agree with, get sign off on that so that work can get done.
Yeah.
And then the one that you're not happy with, more consultation be done and that come at a later date.
Or not.
Or not, whatever.
So that we jumped half a process here. Councillor Walker will come back to this one second. Go, Councillor Walker. I'll give you 2 seconds and I'll go back to
Sorry,
the Kirby's suggestion.
I think what you were raising, Councillor Walker, was Jamie's email regarding the governance group and their decision making in terms of recommending to council, which is what I've just answered.
To be up here.
Which is what I've just answered.
Changed from when we were appointed in that.
Because my understanding from council was it was delegated authority to make.
Oh, but it's, we're not delegated that authority anymore. And
They're gone.
No, you were nominated to go on an advisory panel, decision making panel.
So I assumed that it was, to be quite honest, I didn't think what we were making interim decisions on recommendations.
You know, we'll clarify it. That's incredibly confusing.
So it would be helpful then for the board to understand what's been recommended and what started without a government council, or has nothing started. So I take tenders not been sought yet.
Well, tenders are being sought.
So that hasn't gone to council.
It's only expressions of interest from contractors at this stage though, isn't it?
It would be handy to understand the process.
I understand it.
Yes, yeah.
And they get the interest from the contractors, then they'll go out and say, because I've got to have their attributes all sorted. Then you'll go out and say, right, you guys can tender for this. That's my take of it.
Yeah. Just make sure Drew Hayes just.
Okay.
Drew Hayes
I
has
guess my
nothing to do with this.
concern is, Mr. Chair, and whether it leaves the community board and how much you know about what's happening on this equally that we're going on. If I tell you, there's a lot of potholes and detours. And I hear Councillor Dowler saying he's happy with Tudor Street, but last I knew, all the Tudor Street had not yet been consulted and it was still a work in progress. So my name's not going on anything to say I'm signing off on Tudor Street whilst my community's still not engaged with.
So I guess through Mr. Kirby, it would be absolutely valuable for the community board to be briefed on how this process works.
I actually thought some of them were coming tonight to brief you on where they were at.
I thought they would have been what, and more importantly, where the community board can feed their feedback prior to any decisions being made, so that it's considered in that process.
Yes.
It'd be great, Brad.
So I just wanted to go back on what happened in our board meeting last month. And I just want to make it clear, by no means is this, am I holding group manager responsible for the statements delivered by the communications consultant, the project manager. But from the recording, which most of you may have reviewed and I've transcribed, I just want to quote two attestable statements from the project team. Number one, Amy stated, we have just finished, as of yesterday, the door-to-door knocking of that entire portion. So we're speaking specifically of High Street South. She was referring to surveying 182 properties along High Street South by both aerial imagery and door knocking. Second, in response to a question for verification by board member Hart, so you have not on all of them, end quote. Her response, yep. So we're waiting. I think there's 4 businesses which I have arranged to have further consultation but haven't fed back. But residents have all had opportunity, for the ones that were home during the time across the days that we did, and everyone should, by the end of the week, have the ability to fill out the online survey by letterbox drop as well. So we're aware that there were members that in the public forum that lived along High Street and they had not been consulted. I also reached out to people that I know along High Street, and out of seven of them, only one had been visited, but it doesn't sound like it was from the same team because they were talking about roading and there was no indication around plans for cycle lanes. Further from our letter from the board to the project team, I guess, or to
To the CEO.
To the CEO, sorry. We realised, the chair investigated, and we realised that the number of people contacted along the affected area was actually only around 29%, not the entire portion as we were led to believe. So yeah, it's quite concerning that our community was not fully engaged and consulted, and given the rush with this project, yeah, it leads you to assume other things. Further to that, and I'm not sure if I should raise this here or in general business.
No, it's coming here, as long as it's not confidential.
No, it's not confidential. So arising from that, board member Hutt, or arising from concerns from the community, board member and Hutt and I have a petition for the community against the Transport Choices High Street South Cycleway. So last week we spent several hours visiting residents and businesses in parts of that affected area and speaking with other residents and users of High Street. We had to spend at least 5 to 15 minutes in discussion with nearly everyone we engaged because they didn't really know about the project. Or they were confused about it. At that time, the majority had not been visitors. Some were unaware of the detail of the project, and the majority were against the proposed plan for High Street. So that's something that will be ongoing until, I think.
So my question is, I can't remember what they said about the visitations they did on Tudor Street. Can you?
I can't.
They were partway through.
So, sorry, did the members see the email from Mr. Kirby? I don't think I've attached it to the agenda.
The apology.
Yes.
That's the response from your letter.
Yeah. It's not in.
It's on this,
here,
sorry.
but yes.
Yeah. So the acknowledgement in terms of the concerns were acknowledged, and so I guess.
Knowledge from the CEO and Mr. Kirby, which
is
we're grateful for. I guess the concern is we were misled, and so there's a level of trust that has now.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's been a conversation around that, and I guess the bit the board seeks is so Mr. Kirby is our group manager, so the issues that we have with any team members sits with the chief executive, but in this case it's through Mr. Kirby, but it's Janine's role to have those harder conversations with contractors or staff, contractors.
The contractors.
But absolutely, Mr. Kirby and the chief executive's role is to make sure that to the best of their ability, the information that's presented here by council staff is true and factual. And that's certainly been raised by your board chair and certainly been acknowledged. So transport choices. So yes, board member Hughes.
Would like to note it that I am unhappy with the response from the CEO. This is not the first time this has happened. Once this is over, we need to have a discussion about accountability.
Actually, I tend to disagree in this case because as a result, there was people door knocking Saturday morning.
Yes.
There was absolute transparency about the letters hadn't gone out, they've been held up. So there was absolutely, it was owned. And as part of that, process for consultation was extended. Now it's up to, it would be ideal, in my view, that it comes back to a workshop of the board to be able to feed back to council, whether it's via the governance group or via full council, but for the board to have their ability to provide that feedback, and then the decision making will get made around the council table. That's the process and that's the board's role. And so thank you to Deputy Chair Graham, who gave me a heads up about the survey. Your role is absolutely to advocate for your community really important you don't get dragged into having a view, but advocacy is absolutely part of that. And where you've got lots of views, recording them is appropriate.
Yep.
But again, for this board and the councillors included is, however this goes, there will be people for and against. So as you seek to please one group, you're going to upset another group. So wherever the board lands on that decision, we need to be absolutely careful or absolutely clear that the decision the board makes is a board decision by majority or consensus. And it's probably, if it goes to council, unwise for the 3 elected members to be part of that vote. But certainly as your chair, it's my role to represent your view. But yeah, does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. But I'm really concerned that if I give information to help somebody make a decision, and if I give that information completely inaccurately, I have to be held accountable for that.
Yes.
We made a decision and we had a discussion about information that was just plucked out of somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't, so just to answer it quickly, and I'd expect if you did do that and your role was out there in coordinator Motueka, that your board and chair would have a conversation with you discreetly and not stream it throughout the world for everybody to see. So from my perspective, the board's ability to raise that concern is through Mr. Cooper, the chief executive. It's done it. It's had an apology and an answer. What happened further down is not for this board. That makes sense. I wouldn't expect to know if I did something wrong in my role, I'd expect to be pulled in by whoever I'm answerable to and whatever that is. But I wouldn't expect it to be on the front page of the newspaper what that conversation was. And that's sort of the difference. So it doesn't take much to join the dots in terms of the board's letters public. Part of the record, it's on the agenda. And my apologies because Mr. Cooper's response should be on there as well. But that's the loop. Yeah, and I guess, balance it, because we just had a really strong conversation about something totally unrelated and took a couple of steps to get where the board was comfortable. So that's the bit of making a decision, owning the decision, recognising sometimes it's wrong and right. But I take your point about we rely on good information. In fact, this board can only make decisions on the information given to it. And that was the other thing that was raised, and you saw by email, is that when it's a presentation, we shouldn't really be making any decisions. So, and for that scope and detail of a project, I would have expected that to be in a pack that we could read beforehand. So you've seen all that communication.
Yeah.
I'm lost. So anything else on transport choices? So other than that, there in your other hat, are you expecting elected members at your meeting? I can't remember. I know I've been invited for our town list, but are you expecting elected members there, or is it verbal that they're not? What's the plan?
I'm very happy for elected members.
Have they been invited? I don't think I have as a councillor, but I have seen your emails.
I only found out at RSM.
Yeah.
So if they are tonight, maybe send an email to board members and council if they're invited. If they're not, that's also fine.
I'll talk to Frank.
And then if they're available. Okay. Professional training. So note Friday the 2nd of June. Yes.
Can I just make one more comment?
Absolutely, Mr. Gibby.
Councillor Dowler, you made a comment about stormwater pipe and this work on the street. Timing of it might not allow that to occur. And if you think about it, all we're talking about here, they've got to rip up the road anyway. And they've got to reinstate it as the stormwater pipe comes in, all right? If there happens to be some areas up there, some painted seal, there's not a major cost to reinstate that again. It's only been laid down for 6 months.
But it is a perception. Sorry.
I know it's a perception, but at the end of the day, if we have to hold one up for the other, we might not get it done at all. That's my point. I just want to, I understand what you're saying. It's the same sort of thing about sealing roads. We end up in situations we try not to seal roads when we know we're going to dig and replace a pipe. Sometimes just the way the programming works, it's just, we just can't do one without the other. But the cost of holding off so we don't have to double up, I know there's a perception, but the cost is not a major cost at the expense of holding a major project up just because of the risk of that. I just want to make that comment.
And I guess where the cost being paid for is probably a little more of a softening one. So if they're both government funded initiatives,
Correct.
but it still seems to come out of the same pocket stream a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Diallo.
Yeah, can I just make a comment, because I have been told that both sides of the road and footpath will be altered. With the western side, I understand, may be reduced, they coincide with the new curb and channel put down. The eastern side will definitely be reduced and a new curb and channel introduced. It's not there at the present time. So they'll have to alter stormwater grates and all sorts of stuff to happen while all this going on anyway.
Can I say that they're going to work that through, but at the end of the day, if we have to hold a whole project up because of another one, we may not be able to do that. We may have to just accept, right, scrambled eggs, you've got to break eggs to make that happen.
So my comment to the team was the fact that there is also in that project a set of traffic lights supposedly going in at the McDonald's corner, the Wakaru Street corner. And my thoughts that that's probably the priority to get that intersection sorted out before we start chucking cycle lanes in there. And they sort of looked at me and they said, oh, well, it's proposed to do that, but it's over to Waka Kotahi to sign it off. And I said, well, I hope you're talking to Waka Kotahi right now, because that would be really good to get that done before Christmas. And your cycle lane can follow on through July next year to get it sorted. It sounds to me like it's all 100 mile an hour to get the cycle lane installed before Christmas. And I think with the traffic that's in this town at the moment, if you don't do something with that intersection.
Well, you've just seen on here, the way I read it, there's nothing going to be done before Christmas because that's the consultation period.
July, just give us a consultation. What would be handy, Mr. Kirby, is if.
I'm
not necessarily-
asking for them to give me a process on the.
Not even, they don't need.
Yeah.
To present that to Andy, but otherwise, just an update of what's coming up and,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
But I'm
I'm just highlighting the practicality.
Ain't gonna be.
Noted.
Trying to get into chat with many things too.
Noted, it's not throw each other under the bus. Right, nothing, Friday the 2nd of June here is the board training, and it's at the time where you should all be receiving your devices as well. And they work really well. Just ask Councillor Walker how big Tim Can works. It's great. And just to acknowledge, just to thank Board Member Armstrong for the foresight to do this. I think it will be absolutely valuable when Golden Bay are joining us as well. So item number five is just for your information, and it's really just so I've stated the parameters that I have to be careful of as your chair as one of the 3 elected councillors in this room. To make sure that in terms of when anything is referred from the board to the council, that we're not in a situation where we've predetermined the outcome. Board Member Armstrong.
One thing that is relevant to this affects me. In my earlier role, I had a position able full council meetings.
Yes.
Attend them anyhow. And is it okay with
Yeah, let's.
do that because you can't represent?
I'm happy to note that Board Member Armstrong will continue his delegated council. It's okay.
No, I'm trying to think of any board member.
Oh, it's the one that's delegated from here.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
Yep.
So there'll be full council. And was there a full council?
Anyone on me?
Operations. And, yeah. And regulatory.
Yeah, it was a waste of time, mate. You can't talk.
Right.
Can't vote.
Can't vote. Okay, number 6. Number 6 is sort of the preempt to what we're going to do. We have a conversation around this in terms of after we've closed the meeting as a board only, but I guess the bit's there, and I guess the bit is in terms of the challenge for every elected member is finding the channels where you can influence change in policy process at a governance level. So, the board's ability to influence bylaws by requesting to undertake bylaws is our cousins in Golden Bay have been very good at that. Trying to find that mechanism where you can implement change, and the board at one stage did push quite hard for a review of those enforcement priority of the enforcement policy. 7, noting the correspondence. So while we're there, it's probably the right place to pick up Mr. and Mrs. Clifton skydiving operations request. You heard the presentation, a copy of the letter to the board is here. I don't know. And councillors would have seen the full copy of the letter that went to the mayor. There's a number of things the board can do. I would really strongly recommend that as individuals probably don't get pulled in. What can the board do? Can the board ask somebody to follow up with the mayor to see has it been received and is there a process to it? Oh, okay. Or does the board have a strong view where they would like to ask for a staff report from the airport subcommittee or from the enterprise committee and council and traditional noise complaints over the airfield operation? Board member views.
Didn't print out well.
My eyesight's not the best either. Was that the letter?
This is loads of complaints. Loads. This has been going on for a long time. So I'll just go to a couple of things. Skydiving, I mean, Motueka, we all love skydiving. I go every week. So that's it. But clearly, there are a lot of people that are upset over this. Now, as I understand, they bought another plane. Now, plane is a PAC 750XL, and it looks like it might be a bit big for this airfield. They buy it. I'm actually sure, but I remember when they bought it, there was a lot of people jumping up and down. Okay, well, I've had a wee look, and the maximum all-up weight for aircraft with single wheels is just under 2,300 kgs. Is that right?
You're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about planes.
But anyway, this thing carries 17 passengers, and it flies around. It's a big plane. It's loud. It wasn't so bad when they had a smaller plane. But
Can I perhaps help? Board member Hughes, are you of the mind to request that we get a staff report on the current operations and impacts of the skydive business?
Well, I'm of the view that when people go to TDC with a complaint, as I've been the victim of, they ferociously go for it. Yet when it seems to be about planes, it's ignored.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Look, I vote we get on to Adrian and send these guys round and shut them down until we find out what the problem is.
So I'm just going to test that thought. So for all the users of the airport and the economy that brings, you're asking the board to write a letter to shut that down?
How much?
Just checking.
Yeah, okay. How much does the airport provide?
It's my question. Are you asking?
Thousands of dollars together.
Are you asking for the board to request that the airport shuts down until they get to the bottom of the noise complaint?
Okay, I'm with you.
Because if you are, you'll need somebody to second that, and I'm going to be interested. You're going to get somebody to do that.
Okay, see ya. Look, I've just had a lot of people in here being unhappy about these planes over a long time. And I just didn't, what can I do? You know what I mean? You just expect it. And now all of a sudden, here we go again. Here's another one. And, you know, it looks like no one's doing anything about it. That's what it looks like. But
the one thing that's happened is Mr.
Kirby's. What's the maximum allowable noise level? Is this acceptable?
Does the board want to find that out?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. So
yeah.
Thank you. So we'd like to know.
I'm naive on how we deal with.
Can I help you? Can I help you, Nick? So what I'm hearing you saying is, what is the permitted noise levels for operations airport for the Motueka airport?
Yeah.
Is there a resource consent in place or is it required? What are the parameters for operating off the Motueka airport? And that should be pretty easy to find in an SOP somewhere. The board could please have a copy of that. And Mr. Kirby's followed up with the mayor in terms of where you're in the process with the complaint.
Yeah.
Is that good enough for today?
Yeah, okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. Because I'm not very good at finding stuff out here, and I've been looking online, and what I've found.
I just need to check that the board's happy with that. Yes, yes. What do we strong? Yes, probably not. No, not happy. I'm not going to ask you the question, and it's up to Councillor Walker, but I just know the committee that Councillor Della chairs.
If I'm happy for you to get a report back from staff, I'd also like to acknowledge and thank you because you actually did respond. I'm a little bit concerned. If I don't have evidence of that, but if CBC.
It would have been the generic one.
But you did respond, for which I'm grateful.
I got told off by a councillor if I didn't in the past. That's it, all right, Emma, and I guess that's probably Mr. Cuba that will get it for us. The operation, the noise operation from aircraft there. For the airport, but I'm really interested, is there a resource consent required? And if it is, what does it say? And it's probably CAA.
Yeah.
What are the parameters that control the plans?
I have no clue about that.
And can you please summarise that book into a one
There will be
page?
operating conditions for the airport. Specific operations there will probably have a consent and they have to comply with the operation conditions of the airport.
Yeah.
Which will allow certain noise at certain times.
But as we know, there's not always compliance to consent.
Well,
Wastewater.
we've got criticised for being
I know.
vigilant about
I know.
compliance, and now you want us to be more
No,
vigilant.
I'm asking you for information.
Okay.
Councillor Dowler.
You find in the management plan that the skydive, the drag racing, all the operations that are happening there at the moment are a permitted activity in that management plan, so that's why there's no reasons consent required. In the past, any noise complaints, as far as I'm aware, as soon as the plane leaves the ground, because council only has control of aircraft while they're on the ground, flicks over to the CAA. Because of the continuing noise out in the public, wrong wording, continual talk, the airport did propose to do a noise map about 4 or 5 years ago. But it was a cost of about $7,000 to $8,000 to get that project done. And the airport wasn't financially viable to pay for that at that stage. So it wasn't completed. Mr. Bean has indicated a couple of times about it because I got into the area pretty soon after they replaced that plane, so that it was twice as noisy as the previous one. They better do something about it because there is a string of people in the town and going to start complaining. And I'm like, oh, you
It's disappointing, and I don't know the history, but
anyway,
it sounds like the Cliftons have tried the approach with the operator.
it's happened now. It's happening. I've got a video I took on my home block. An aeroplane up in the clouds, which was a parachute plane. And you can hear it quite loudly on my cell phone.
So just those parameters of where it operates, because I guess at the end of the day, the council permits the taking off part. No noise if plane can't take off. It's the end bit, but it is an airport, so I get it. But I'm also interested in, and it probably won't be in the report, is this has just changed in the last 18 months, where that was a new aircraft will change from flight plan. And who decides that stuff? Yeah, I don't know.
Previous plane, they spent $10,000 on putting a tri-blade propeller on to stop the noise completely away from the plane. So just they might want to spend that sort of money on this plane, and they have. That was just me talking to them.
Yeah.
One-on-one. Nothing to do with the airport or anything. I just told them to shut it up. They could. I knew what was going to happen. There it has. So
Yes.
I can say I told you so.
Yeah, because that's a fair request from a member of the public asking for the board to advocate for them.
Yeah.
Board member Hughes.
Yeah, I had this talk of resource consent. I couldn't find anything.
You don't have to, we asked for it. You don't have to find it, we just asked. That was Kimmy. Go quiet on me now. Okay, the action list. No, isn't the action list the next item in there? What was? Yeah, it's out of order. We'll come back to the action list because now I've lost my place. Items from board members. Matu, board member Hart.
So yes, Keep Motueka beautiful meeting and looking at the not the transport choices or the streets for people, this cycling and walkway. And they wanted to point out that put a request in not to widen the pathways that go through Thorpe Bush because it would damage existing tree roots and so forth. So we really just wanted that noted.
But Mr. Cube, well, am I right in assuming that that couldn't happen without coming to the board? Because the Reserve Management Act must be pretty tight in terms of changing cycleways and Marty? I'm not sure, and I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah,
Don't know either. You mean in terms of the legal status, Martin?
Yes, so in terms of if there was a decision made somewhere to cut a bigger, wider cycle walkway back through Tamatu, would that just happen operationally, or would that come across some table?
The Waihi Tapu?
It's got its own reserve management, but probably significant.
But it's not in the management plan that they discussed with Ely. It probably needs to be if it's
Well, they've got them.
excavation and all that, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, somewhere do you just, it's in the board chair's report. You want to note it, but does the board agree with that? That anything that happens in Tamatu that's significant in terms of walking the cycling ways should be consulted and the board included?
Maybe if that's going to be consulted, because I'm taking it on as their baby. Yes, I'd like the board to be
Just an expectation. So just an expectation that we
Yeah.
expect key stakeholders to be consulted, the community board as being one, keep Motueka computing one, and potentially the youth council as being one of the others. Yeah. I don't think it's actually anything that we can formally say, but I guess it's an expectation we've just minuted.
Yeah.
AF8, don't know if anybody's attended AF8. Councillor Walker asked me to put that in. The room was set out with about half the chairs in the room. By the end of the night, every chair in Motueka Memorial Hall, I think, was full. It was a huge turnout. The simple message is that in terms of metrics for earthquakes, the time between now and the next 50 years is 75% likelihood that magnitude 8 will rupture along the Alpine Fault. With the science, they gave a science presentation that backs sort of all that up. But the key message is it's always been the time to know your neighbours, prepare as communities, because if that does happen, there will be help at some stage, but don't expect help straight away, because it severs just about every main transport route and power line that connects communities. So it will become a time where you light a fire, share food with your neighbours, and do what you can to get through. The good part is that the advice is if you prepare for AF8, then you're prepared for any emergency that would hit you. Councillor Walker.
Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for giving me that, because I was at another meeting, so I couldn't attend. I guess my one question is, and I probably could have asked it myself, but thinking about it now, was Joe or anyone from
Not Joe, but yes, there was somebody there from Civil Defence. Yes.
and does that filter back through to council at all, or do we just hold that information locally?
I don't think so. So it was really good, because remembering that all the South Island councils fund AF8, so every council in the South Island is stakeholders to that. And the new councillors were presented that presentation at the LGNZ conference in Nelson. So they do present to the forum. How you get there, I'm not sure, but yeah, there was also questions about tsunami maps and that sort of stuff as well. Early warnings, what would happen, but yeah, the key thing is, I guess, is it's one of the events where it doesn't really matter what you plan for, what you put in place, is you need to be resilient, because even if there's a whole lot of help, it probably can't get to you in a time.
Sorry, if I may just quickly,
Yeah.
my concern is people like myself that couldn't read it because we are committed to something else. How would you know?
Oh, there's an interactive website, so AF8.
How would you know? Yeah, it isn't, but how does our community know that? That's where I'm coming from.
I guess it could be a new sign. Like I know AF8's been around a long time, so I'd attended one before I joined council.
Only through the invite, but I didn't know about
Oh,
it.
okay.
Didn't know what it was.
I was saying it's.
Maybe it could be the next community board column thing in Newsline.
Yes.
I'll get somebody to write it for me.
You're the only one that we.
No, Joe or somebody.
That presentation has been, most of us involved in Virgin Management have seen it. They've been up here 2 or 3 times. And they've visited schools and done it as well. So it's not away because I had it quite as frequently as most others. But the team are full-time going around, going over. Yeah.
They're definitely rotating. I talked about their rotation circuit.
But I actually think it's a pretty good idea to put that in the column. That
Okay.
is.
My big tin can's just broken. I think the next one was Deputy Chair Graham from memory.
Yeah.
The chair's report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the liaison with emergency services CFO, Chief Fire Officer, came about from an inquiry regarding the cycleways and if they had been consulted. And in that conversation, we explored the opportunity to meet regularly so that we're across things. They can give us feedback, we can give them feedback on anything. So that's basically all that's in there for. And I will set up a time and let you all know. So whoever wants to be part of that moving forward. That's with, I think at this stage, we're just doing fire and ambulance and.
So I'll let you know when the police is done.
Yeah. So they don't want to merge?
So previously, they're usually different aspects.
Okay.
Yeah, one's usually about rostering and resourcing.
Right.
Also their timing.
Yeah.
The meeting wouldn't happen if we were.
And we're waiting
for those services line together.
Yeah, okay.
To be fair, Councillor Walker generally nudges me when it's time to meet with
That's the.
senior Dunley. Oh, okay.
I was at the citizenship ceremony next year, but I think it fell on deaf ears intentionally. And maybe it's not him that we meet now, maybe we should be meeting.
Yeah.
I think it's handy to have a board liaison with someone that sits around the senior leadership team of the Tasman Policing.
Send them an email and.
It'll be on an action list, I'm sure. Okay, anything else in there?
Just any other
Items
items?
from the board? Yes, please.
Yeah, yep. Member Hart.
Thank you. In March 2022, over a year ago, I presented to the board, before I was on the board, a section for Carl Street being used for heavy goods, heavy vehicle bypass. And there has been a lot of discussion sort of periodically, but actually nothing's been done.
I think it's been cemented because if Queen Victoria's to bypass that is going to be the only way out. And the public forum suggested.
You were sort of there.
So, but people in my street have also commented, you know, when it was sealed, because it was covered in potholes, which it does look nice. Thank you very much, TDC. There was talk initially about having the pedestrian crossing raised at R Street, Parkland School. The road's been resurfaced, but nothing's happened with the pedestrian crossing. So I guess I'm feeling a bit frustrated that nothing has happened, and this was over a year. And no communication at all.
Things are coming. On its way.
Transport choices. Yes.
Transport choices.
No car parking and raised. I guess that's one of the challenges you may have is the solution may be transport choices.
Indication.
Car parking.
A double two-way cycle lane on
On a heavy goods bypass, it's not safe.
on your side of the road from countdown through to the Marae, raised crossings.
That will act as a deterrent.
Bicycle, raised as a section at the end of
Fire engine uses that brick
Common
too.
Street.
I hope you're right, but I went to see a couple of trucking companies again Friday, and they're choosing Parr Street because we're talking about the roundabout again. The smoothing of it hasn't done anything at all. They just avoid it like the plague. So if they're going to avoid the roundabout, are they going to avoid Parr Street because it's got a cycle lane on it? I don't know, but it's a safety issue with the primary school, cycle lanes going on with B trains and trucks and trailers going past. It's a big concern. And I just feel like it's been left.
Can somebody remind me about the process of lowering heavy vehicles on residential? What happened around St. Arnaud in terms of that road protection? Remember there was was it St. Arnaud? When there was a prohibition on heavy vehicles using part of the road because it was damaging it.
Suddenly that road up the way that was actually apart was about 2.
That was on our road, on,
So Parr Street's council road. So is there a process to limit? I guess the question is there a process to limit 50 tonners with truck and trailer units in specific residential streets, whether that's the right thing to do for Parr Street is?
and I'm feeling the reason why we invoked that on the road was because of the damage that was being incurred. Every time we fixed it was blown again, so if that was any reason we could close heavy traffic on.
Right. Is that not the case with
The
Parr?
road had to be evaluated to see whether you could take the tonnage.
And Parr can take that?
Well,
Well, can't, can it? Because Drew has to tell you how many pitch up jobs it's going to do on that bit of road.
I understand it's all right now, isn't it?
So is that the question? Do we get somebody to tell us whether that road's rated for?
I spoke with Jamie.
How do you do that? I don't know how you do that.
Regarding the banning of heavy trucks banned and cannot do that just so the trucks.
Exactly. Exactly right.
It's got to be a physical, actual reason why council would control.
Transport choices is about soothing specific streets, so it discourages all vehicles, not just heavy trucks. So that could be.
That'd be the reason. That'd be the.
Whether it's the saviour or the devil.
No.
That'd be the intervention. Yep.
There has been communication, I believe, with Andrea, the principal at Parkland School, about the same issue, obviously safety with the primary school, but I just feel, where are we at?
So I guess there's one thing that's tangibly that you could get the board to write, and that's to Waka Kotahi in terms of what have been the smoothing treatments for the roundabout that was discussed. Like, you know, there was talk of that being smooth, wasn't it?
Oh.
So you could ask for that to be done, and if the smoothing takes it,
They need it, but it's a big.
is it still sharp?
Yeah.
If you want me to write that, I can write that.
Yeah.
Well, that is the first part of it.
The second part is to unilaterally decide where trucks and things go without consulting the wider community is going down the tunnel of the current project. Because there's an unintended consequence, isn't it? If they don't go past Street, they're going somewhere else. They may choose to turn up Pakawera Street. They may go back down King Edward Street. They may go down Wales Street.
And then Ekin Street down.
Yeah. So moving one.
Well, I guess it
that's right.
depends if you think it's safe for heavy goods to go past a primary school, then there's no
There's
issue.
actually two raised crossings going out. One at Talbot Street, that's a section. And with the existing.
The transport choices, if it goes through, yeah, but
So the
that's,
truck will probably
Yeah.
get away down Wolfe Street, down Baker Street.
So the other choices is it's safe for them to go to Pitt Street.
Exactly. That's what they'll say.
Is it safe to go past? It's safe to go past the high school. Is it?
anyway, I just wanted to not go.
If I ask about the roundabout,
The other concern, and I mentioned this before, is with the state of the Parr Street, because it's a TDC road, because of the trucks And it is because of the roundabout, because they never used to come down there. So, you know, that needs to be absolutely recognised. They never came down Paul Street or the
I think
roundabout.
I don't think it was the roundabout. I think it was the removal of that. They couldn't swing physically with that.
With the, whatever
median.
safety.
On the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People coming down there.
Couldn't get the swing.
Yeah.
So the unintentional consequence of removing that pedestrian thing meant they could turn there.
Yeah, but the other concern is the damage that it's doing is now coming out of our ratepayers' money because it's a TDC road. So presumably we paid for Paul Street to be resurfaced because of a balls up from Wakakatahi. So that's going to be a continual problem with residential streets.
Yeah.
Is there a map that you have that shows what roads are suitable for heavy vehicles or not?
No.
Just following from what Claire was saying and other conversations around the table. So unintended consequences when these decisions are made. So I hear from the community in Mapua that the raised crossings that are proposed for there is actually going to impede on emergency services reaching Ruby Bay if there's an emergency. So the conversation with the CFO was when the lights were put in to Motueka and they were not consulted by NZTA, that it's taking their volunteer firefighters an extra 2 minutes to get to the station in order for them to go. When they're all together, he said it's fine, they can reach the destination. But then if we then add in raised crossings everywhere, what impact's that going to have on them being able to reach someone in need?
It makes it slower because that's the intention of those.
Exactly.
It makes everything slower.
It will make everything slower.
Which mightn't be a bad thing because there has been the odd Motueka fire engine that's rolled.
Ambulance just quietly. I don't
already
want
have
And we've,
those issues.
and we've had a ambulance
Yeah.
roll at the lights in Queen Street as well. So sometimes the speed makes it longer. Gosh. So what are you wanting to do? So you just made a whole lot of statements, but what's the follow-up?
Well, I think in their planning and that, they actually need to be more considerate around all of the potential risks.
So who's the operations committee representative for the board? So the important part for roading is when you see that in the agenda, to grab it, let the councillors know, and Trinity's deputy chair of that committee, that's and ask permission if you can speak to it. So if there's something in that pack, because that's where the decisions will get made. So I guess one of those notes is to look out for that. And for Nick, you can come to me as deputy chair regulatory. If there's something specifically you want to talk about that's in the agenda pack, then I'll see how we get the list there. But because that's the bit, once it's signed off and done, it's done. And that means, the board didn't put a submission into the annual plan, but all those avenues to have your say are the bits that take time to do. Okay. Councillor Walker.
If you give consent for board member Hutt to actually approach the chair of operations committee and ask her to get it added to our meeting so that staff have an opportunity to put some thought around it.
Absolutely.
We get some answers and we don't drag it out for another month and another.
There you
month.
go. Steve McKenzie.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. That's perfect. Here's an outcome.
I'll bet that.
Any other, councillor Dowler?
Yeah, I'm starting to get a wee bit of an issue regarding the state of our road repairs that are happening around the town at the present time. I've got photos on my phone. Reseal patches that were done down Queen Victoria Street 2 weeks ago. And they actually just sprayed the tar seal over existing potholes. And I've got photos of the brand new seal with water sitting in their seal potholes. And a phone call today, I responded at lunchtime regarding a reseal they've just done on Wildwood Road off Queen Victoria Street. The intersection of Queen Victoria Street, apparently the seal is just already falling off. It was only done this week. For some reason, somehow they've made the road a metre wider and pretty much just, there's no prep, just has to run the digger down with the blade and just give it a scrape and they've put a metre wider tar seal, which apparently is already falling apart. They didn't do the areas further down, was the plant centre, which has thumping great big potholes. that had been asked to be rectified and for them to have a look at, which we did on a drive-by that day with Drew, showed him those. But apparently, in the last 24 hours, I've had a digger down there and it's just done a bit of a scratch and patch on the side of the road. So
It would be handy. I was going to say, it's Drew's coming next month. It'd be really handy to not swipe, send him the photos and the concerns and he can answer
Do
them.
CSRs on that, send it through. That's the only way you're going to deal with it. Otherwise, it's just going to fester and fester and nobody thinks nobody's done anything about it because they don't know.
Can we get,
Antenna.
I haven't been down to Marble Road yet because I had to get down here. Otherwise I would have done a drive on the way here. But tomorrow afternoon when I get back, I'll be going down there and doing such a thing. So yes, I will do that.
And to get it and done, so Drew's coming next meeting. So if you want to, preference would be to send him some photos. So I'm going to raise this because this is ridiculous. And also Deputy Chair Graham was asked, could he give some detail on the bitumen mix? What's the quality of the mix? Just so he knows before he comes.
where it's coming from?
Yeah.
Won't be New Zealand.
So yeah, so Drew's coming next month. Deputy Chair Graham.
So it's just FYI, I've had a meeting with a audit navigator and also over at Community House just regarding the increase in homelessness in our community. So it was reported that at least 20 men are living without a home in Motueka at the moment. So that means they're sleeping out on doorsteps and wherever they can find somewhere to go. It's unknown how many are actually living in cars, including parents and children. And we actually had a child come to one of our Solution Sports events whose parent, they're living in a van. So they got given a free pass to our event, but just to note that I've witnessed it myself. Community House hold a monthly lunch and I've mentioned that has doubled this year and people attending that. They are going to look at maybe doing a breakfast or something as well, but once a month. We might need to see if there's any other community organisations holding stuff like that. The other concern was the seriousness of the methamphetamine issue in the area, which I wasn't really aware of, but apparently the drug has become extremely affordable and it's extremely addictive. And when I hear something's becoming affordable, that means it's in reach of younger and younger people because now they can get their hands on it.
Has the ministry done water testing? Like, you guys involved with the water testing? Because they usually sample water. Yes, that's usually
That's our normal indicator there, but it's what's happening. Community is for our waste.
You don't do it, it'll be at the instruction of either MSD or Ministry of Health.
Councillor Walker.
So just to share with you, Deputy Chair, that I had a conversation offline with Adrian Humphreys, and I would like to formally ask that the board asks for stats on, so when people find, so if we find a car sitting somewhere, often the compliance team get involved. And I wanted to glean an understanding of the stats of how many of those are not freedom campers, but people who have no choice but to be residing in a vehicle. And what happens when our compliance team comes across them, and are we actually partnering and doing referrals or doing some support, or are we politely just saying, can you just move from here so you're not saying again? So I'm mindful that Adrian has been off, so there hasn't been anything, but I actually would like for the board to get that information in light of, I have these conversations quite regularly in community, but that's because I'm known as that lady that works for Salvation Army, and I might be able to help people.
Can I just add to that? I didn't say it at the start only because I don't have any proof, but the conversation actually came about because apparently someone from council took this man's tent. And that couldn't be verified because anyone can say they are from council. It could be a neighbour that didn't like the side of the tent. I don't know. But yes, I'm hearing that as well.
Was the tent essentially taken from a park?
I have no
Because if it
idea,
is, it was a council contractor. But anyway, we can ask that question.
potentially, because we're out here.
So whatever councillor Walker said. Does
I agree.
regulatory, does compliance have stats on the homelessness
Yeah.
factor and not freedom camping factor? And what is,
We're not a special students, but I do need special conscience, you might like to think. That it's a bigger picture here and it's around housing in our community.
100%.
And it's also around the vulnerability of our community. As we go out and talk about our rates increases, that's just gonna add.
so let's get some information, because the next bit is, that's all great. Shall we park them in a park next door to me or you or the next person? Well, what do we do when we know?
Yeah.
So let's get the information.
It's a big,
Yeah. Well, we just lobby,
Yeah.
we lobby government agencies. So board member Hughes, then member Hart.
Sorry, unfortunately, the laws of the very quite clear. If you live in your car for 8 weeks, it becomes a building and then therefore subject to the same reasonable consent to house. This has been my big issue all along. And it's one which Tasman District Council have refused to and have been unable to answer a simple question.
I guess,
I'll leave that out, but asking, so these guys are breaking the rules. And I have emails which state when TDC become aware, then they will act. So if they've chosen not to act against these people, that is discriminatory.
so first we get the information, and therein lies the next question.
yeah.
Now you've got the information, what's your stance and what will we do with it?
It doesn't mean you only need one person. The stats just mean there's lots.
No, it's a perfect comment, board member Hughes. Board member Hart.
Following on from what you were saying about the reports of increasing mass,
Mm.
I sent a text to Scott Satherley last night, and I forwarded it to Brent. My 10-year-old son and his friend put the dog for a walk at Memorial Park, and they came back horrified that they'd just witnessed a drug deal at the outdoor gym equipment.
It's good because we're not going to put a roof on it now, so that's fine.
So yes, totally. There used to be on the community board periodically, like Scott, for example, coming in and giving us a bit of a.
Yes, so going back to Deputy Chair's point is that we changed that to, we'd meet with Martin Dunley out of here, because the ability to be able to talk about this
Yeah.
was easier outside of public forum. So if you want detail and more scope, that's why those meetings were called. Okay, so all right, we are moving on. Public forum, so also the leader is in there regards to Whakawera Street. So is there anything in terms of an outcome you want from that?
I can tell you now that I didn't remember this, but apparently it was raised at the last meeting by Antonia Ellich. Same footnote.
That's right.
Yeah, it's in the okay.
Yeah.
The response was, thank you for your inquiry requesting footpath between 92 and 108 Whakarewa Street. Council is aware of the site, delay constructing a path that would require curb and channel due to several factors. First, the land has the potential to be developed, and this would likely require the road and existing boundary to be changed. Secondly, the existing hedge is on the road boundary, and the space between the hedge and the trafficked road and hedge is narrow versus power poles. Some years ago, the gravel shoulder was improved to make more workable a shoulder. We will now reassess the shoulder to ensure it is still adequate. There may be an opportunity to encourage drivers to provide greater passing clearance by painting an edge line along the section of road, as well as some physical separators. So that's what Steve Elkington has said. I've actually gone back and said, rather than waiting for the land to be developed, is there anything we can do in the early, initiate something earlier? So that's something.
So the action it's been sent through staff for a question. Thanks for a quick update. So, yep. Trees. What do we thought the trees on High Street?
I'll just make it.
Yeah.
So this was Keep Motueka Beautiful project at the museum. Something else as well that we sorted out 2 or 3 years ago was the parking, people were parking on the museum frontage, museum staff, members of the public, kids from school and staff and users. And it was damaging the mosaic frontage and also the roots of the tree. So Steve Elkington organised having a post put with a rope across, and there was keys given to various organisations that use that area. But when it was installed, it's just permanently open because everyone's just parking there still.
Oh, sorry. So hang on, we'll pick it up and see. Let's go back to the trees. Is there any, so basically it was just giving the board an update about the trees. Happy with the update, working with staff?
Yep.
No issues about the trees?
Sorry to mention it.
Makes it clean.
Yeah. It's
One would hope if council officers are involved in this at the moment. But yeah, they will be. Okay, so that's the trees part.
But there's a fly in the ointment. Can we get what to say?
Yes, and that was mentioned in terms of Jamie was getting that tomorrow, perhaps. We'll come back to you in a second.
It is linked with that, that's why.
Okay, yeah, link it, yeah.
Because if people are still going to be parking there, my point is, are they going to get damaged like the other one? So the solution would be, can we enforce that area is actually used? I don't know how much it cost, but it's never used.
There's a rope area that was put in there because actually the Arts Council come and presented to the board about the damage to the mosaic tiles. So I'm going to get it fixed. So over here somewhere there's a rope with a padlock.
Is that the only crossing in?
Yes,
Yeah.
but see, there was a big push to try and get away with this, but I think in the lease, the cafe operators have some parks and the museum curator wants park. Well, they just need to put it back up, don't they?
It's a habitual thing.
When there's.
And then they don't put it back up?
Yeah.
It's
And probably the
Well,
delivery truck.
it's a bit too hard.
Well, they
to put up
changed-
If you've gone out.
PDC changed the parking, if you
sweat
remember
on
Up here.
by the
If you've got a pack.
Thai restaurant, they put 2 P5s
Yes.
there for delivery. But which was again to help with the problem. But the rope's never been used. It's just dangling on the floor next to the metal post.
We have pack.
So we want to ask that the rope is used?
Who's supposed to use the ropes?
Used quite a bit, but then it's just tailed off.
It's that bollocks.
Yeah, who can't bother?
So the action would be to find if it's Steve and for Steve to remind the people that have access to the gate.
We'll put
The rope.
something there that's.
Please go and lock it afterwards. Or are you being stronger and saying you don't want anybody parking in there and nobody has access?
Sorry.
Are you saying you don't want anybody to have access there and nobody parks there?
Well, the agreement is that the front of the museum was kept as the front of the museum and not as a car park.
There's some lease conditions. I was in there for over here, beside the museum.
Not according to when we discussed it years ago.
My recollection was actually a high-ab truck and a Christmas light damaged the mosaic. When the Arts Council came to me, it was about the really heavy stuff that was in here, and that's when it all come up. So I'm just asking the board, what do you want to do? So there's a suggestion from Claire
Well,
that,
they do have delivery trucks going in there. They need that for the.
do you want the hog girls here next month saying we can't get our cars in the car park? Not asking, because Claire's right, there was money spent to put an arm up there. Prevent
So
people,
take it down or it needs to be used. It's just a waste of time.
help.
Yeah.
We're talking about the lack of the use of the road. Actually, to be fair, we actually, to give credit to what's potentially raised, we're talking about essentially the high street town centre being clogged with cars and people parking there and not putting it. So anybody could go in there. People will be leisurely eating lunch or standing around. Kids will be walking without the rope up.
Look, I'll leave it up to you learned colleagues. Just make a decision.
It's your decision. It's not what. Councillor Dowler.
Give the long girls a car parking pass and then get the parking meter banned, be absolutely. If they take no prisoners.
Simple question is, do you want me to ask Steve to follow up? Please,
Ask them to keep,
can they
if they can
put it
put
up?
the thing up in the.
Done.
Done.
Get revenue up somewhere.
We've talked about the Clifton complaints.
Yeah.
And we'll note Jude's transport option comment. And then we'll just note Mr. Williamson's My past suggestion. Right, Chief.
You don't follow the new council down that street.
Oh, yes, yes.
One, the fact that she made me.
Yes.
I believe Mr. Williamson's submission, and we should pass that on. What done?
All I'm doing is pass the guide, or do you want to have a discussion? Because
No, I just.
Yeah.
You said it noted, and I thought, well.
I don't know.
Should it be passed on?
Yeah, pass it. Is there anything else in there? I don't think there is. I move to receive the chair's report, seconded by board member Armstrong. All those in favour, aye. It's carried. Take me to 7 something or other. 7.3, financial, noted. Any questions? Moved by
Yeah.
Hart
That's two.
Graham. Any questions? All those in favour say aye. It's carried. Special projects action list. Oh, how about noted?
Yeah.
Because we had a discussion on the priorities. We've had Mr. Strange turn up and very good appointment, Mr. Kirby.
Yeah.
Thank you. So received it.
Yeah.
Use Hart. Favour aye. It's carried. Okay, item 9, let's move into public. Oh. Yeah, Hughes and sorry, I've been turbo brief.
There's one item you asked at the last meeting, and that was about the earthquake prone buildings, report back on what's happening down High Street.
Oh, yes.
Somehow my communication with Emma didn't eventuate. I did get a reply from Matt Feely, and this is what he says. The priority buildings have been identified within the timeframe required, being 1st of July 2022. Notification letters have been sent to the respective building owners. Bevan has been meeting with recipients to walk through possible avenues and provide explanations or information that cannot be conveyed in a letter. In fact, there's a couple of meetings tomorrow in Motueka, and this was written on the 16th of May. With building owners, the face-to-face approach worked best, and availability shows PVC records the significant impact and cost involved. Please note, section 133AD of the Building Act allows for identification of additional buildings that come to the knowledge of the authority at any time, and also revisions of previous assessments where information comes to light. I do not believe at this time this will need to be brought into action. We're now in the other building identification phase. This falls due mid-27.
Okay. Mr. Ogilvie and Mr. Williamson, thank you for enduring